Entertainment proudly presents.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
The Never Submit Podcast.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
With your host, Matthew Ciccella.
And what you gonna do when Hulkamania and the largest arms in the world destroy you?
Join Matthew and his special guests as they discuss the latest news and rumors in all forms of entertainment.
Are you ready? The champ is here! If you're the man, give me a hell yeah! What the Rock is cooking.
Each week, they break down everything from movies and TV shows.
Check out the big brain on Brad. You're a smart motherfucker, that's right.
To professional wrestling and mixed martial arts.
If you're not down with that, we got 2 words for ya! Ooh, yeah!
It's wild.
Say hello to my little friend!
And crazy.
They look like psychos? Is that what they look like? They were vampires. Psychos do not explode when sunlight hits them. I don't give a fuck how crazy they are.
And completely uncensored.
Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn time.
It's the Never Submit Podcast.
Hasta la vista, baby.
And it's happening right now.
Game over.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Never Submit Podcast. This is episode number 18. I'm your host, Matthew Ciccella. We have a packed and jammed panel for you today. All 3 guys are with us. We got Sean Waters, Mike Moulton, and Joshua Hall. Guys, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us back.
Man, this is going to be fun.
This is going to be fun.
This is definitely going to be eventful.
You guys are right. This is going to be an eventful podcast. And the reason why, as many of you are aware, we usually discuss, movies and TV shows, professional wrestling, mixed martial arts, whatever's going on in pulp culture. We talk about it. However, tonight, we were scheduled to discuss The Undertaker returning to the WWE, Jurassic World breaking more records and securing a sequel. We're even going to give our reviews on Marvel's Ant-Man and Joe Dirt 2. However, with that said, we won't be discussing any of that tonight, and we will hold that over until next week. So any movie-related information we'll be discussing next week. So I apologize to our movie listeners. I know some of you guys don't listen to our wrestling podcast. However, the reason we're only discussing wrestling tonight and not even the wrestling storylines, tonight we're focusing solely on the story involving Terry Bollea, better known as Hulk Hogan. As most of you know, listening to this podcast, unless you live under a rock, Hulk Hogan has become the center of a media scandal as transcripts have leaked that allegedly have Hulk Hogan making racial slurs. Due to these allegations, the WWE has decided to remove all mentions and media relating to Hulk Hogan from its official website, the Hall of Fame website, all social media accounts. He has also been removed as a judge of WWE Tough Enough, the TV show, as well as released from his WWE Legends contract. Essentially, WWE and Hulk Hogan have severed ties and are no longer affiliated with one another. We do have statements from the WWE as well as Hulk Hogan himself. I want to read over some of those statements as well as some statements from some other parties. Then we're going to jump into feedback from you guys, the panelists. But I do want to get all the facts out there before we get into our own opinions. With that said, before we start, I do have to give the disclaimer that any views or opinions presented in this podcast are solely those of ourselves and do not necessarily represent that opinion of Never Submit Entertainment, the motion picture company that presents this podcast. Now, with all that stuff out of the way, we started out this morning with the statement that shocked the world. The WWE has terminated its contract with Terry Bollea, aka Hulk Hogan. The WWE is committed to embracing and celebrating individuals from all backgrounds as demonstrated by the diversity of our employees, performers, and fans worldwide, said the WWE in an official statement. That is how most of us woke up this morning, getting the statement that WWE has terminated its agreement with WWE wrestling legend Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan responded with that statement to People magazine in an exclusive. He says, 8 years ago, I used offensive language during a conversation. It was unacceptable for me to have used that offensive language. There is no excuse for it, and I apologize for having done it. This is not who I am. I believe very strongly that every person in this world is important and should not be treated differently based on race, gender, orientation, religious beliefs, or otherwise. I am disappointed with myself that I use that language. I use language that is offensive and inconsistent with my own beliefs. Hulk Hogan's lawyer, David Houston, followed up with a statement saying that Hulk Hogan decided to resign from the WWE because he did not want to put them or his family through this, therefore saying that Hogan stepped down from WWE and was not released from the WWE. Now, I'm going to go ahead real quick here and just read a transcript, alleged transcript. Let's make that clear. This is not confirmed. This is reported by the National Enquirer, and this is what everybody is saying that Hulk Hogan said. This statement comes from a security footage of a sex tape that Hulk Hogan was making, unbeknownst to himself, with his best friend Bubba the Love Sponge's wife at the time, Heather Clem. Hogan did not know he was being recorded at the time of this transcript, any of this taking place. Hogan was unaware of this. However, he says, and this is all broken up again, alleged by the National Enquirer, this is not confirmed. He says, broken down throughout the transcript, I guess we're all a little racist. She is making some real bad decisions now. My daughter Brooke jumped sides on me. I spent $2 to $3 million on her music career. I've done everything like a jackass for her. The one option Brooke had, Brooke's career besides me, is to sell Beach Records. I don't know if Brooke was fucking the black guy's son. I mean, I don't have double standards. I mean, I am a racist to a point. Fucking N-words. But then when it comes to nice people and shit, and whatever, I mean, I'd rather, if she was going to fuck some N-word, I'd rather have her marry an 8-foot-tall N-word worth $100 million, like a basketball player. I guess we're all a little racist. Fucking N-word. That is the alleged transcript of what Hulk Hogan said that is supposedly getting him in so much trouble. Before I get your guys' opinion, I want to get the opinion of some people that are a little more closer to the situation than we are. People that know Hulk Hogan personally, not just through the television character like we do. The person that knows him the most is his daughter, Brooke. She was the topic of this conversation that Hulk was having with Heather Clem. This person that Hulk was talking about is Brooke's, at the time, boyfriend. So Brooke says, and this is a poem she wrote today for her father. So I don't know if you guys have seen this yet, but this is what Brooke posted on social media. If you knew my father, you would know how hard he fought, and the way it brought a smile to people light, medium, and dark. The Lord says to forgive them. Don't be the one to stone. So please remember his strong arms when you were all alone. My father has a daughter, and I have feelings too. And if I knew your father, I would do the same for you. That's a poem from Brooke Hogan to us as the people discussing what her father is going through. Now, a few more things I want to get to you guys. And this comes from George Foreman, the former boxing champion of the world, who is a black man, I might add. He's an African American. Make that politically correct for everybody. George Foreman states, I have known Hulk Hogan for well over 20 years. I do not condone the language he used, but he is no racist. He is a good guy. He is a friend of mine. We have hung out together, and we've been in the ring together. I consider him a friend. This is a quote from George Foreman coming out today after these allegations. Also, former WWE superstar Virgil has told TMZ, you can only judge a person based on past experience. Hulk Hogan has never given me a reason to believe he is a racist. He then followed up with a tweet on Twitter saying, don't be taking Hulk Hogan's word out of text. That man has done more for me than almost anybody, man. Mick Foley follows up with a tweet saying, my heart truly hurts for Hulk Hogan. I firmly believe he's a very good person who made a very bad mistake. At that point, Dennis Rodman goes onto Twitter and says, I have known Hulk for 25 years. There isn't a racist bone in that man's body. Now, as you know, Hulk Hogan, besides these allegations and the transcript that was released, there are people talking about a situation where Booker T, in a promo, was talking about Hulk Hogan, we're coming to get you, and then said, nigga, N-I-G-G-A, not the other word. on a radio station back in 2012, I believe it was, Hulk Hogan clarified to DJ Who Kid this statement of what, Booker T was saying, as Hogan says the brother instead of, the other things, and Hogan said the words on that radio station. However, DJ Who Kid states today, there is nothing racist about Hulk Hogan. The 2012 interview I did, nothing racist about Hulk Hogan. He was just explaining the usage of the N-word among his rapper friends and the WWF. To me, Hogan is the coolest and will always be the reason why I watch professional wrestling. Again, another statement from an African-American celebrity. A lot of these guys are celebrities that know Hulk Hogan personally that are coming to bat for Hulk Hogan. Now, obviously, not everybody is. There are some, like MVP, who said he was not surprised by Hulk Hogan's statements and basically went on to say that you would be surprised how many other idols or legends out there are the same way. I'm paraphrasing what MVP said. So there's a lot of different opinions on what happened with Hulk Hogan. Now, because of the purpose of the podcast, and I think I've rambled on long enough to cover the facts to give us a basis, I'm going to hand it over to you guys. We've been very vocal today on social media. Josh, I've seen you post it a lot. Shawn, me and you talked throughout the day about it. Mike, I haven't really talked to you too much about it. But I'm going to break it up a little bit. Josh, you've been the most vocal on Facebook. I want to start with you. And for people who did not follow you on Facebook, let's just start from the beginning. What were your initial thoughts when you saw the late breaking news that Hulk Hogan had severed ties with WWE? Then when you found out why they severed ties, that WWE had basically eliminated Hogan from the history books as far as they're concerned, and where we are now, several hours into the day. What are your thoughts on what's going on with Hulk Hogan?
I guess the first words that come to mind is confused, for the most part, is just for the fact that I was really confused when I heard well, first off, when I was tagged this morning on Facebook, I thought it was just a mutual separation, because Hogan always seems to come and go with the WWE anyway. So I just thought, oh, okay, well, I don't think he ever signed a Legends contract, so I think he just probably bowed out again. It always seems to happen with money. There was a money issue. Him and Vince couldn't agree on something. Hogan just walked out like he sometimes does. Then when I found out what it actually was all about, I was really confused. And then I was like, well, where did this come from? And then I heard different stories that it was during an interview. No, it was during his sex tape. It was during this. It was during that. And now, Matt, when you mentioned it was during an interview that happened. I think the last I read was like 8 years ago, or it was a conversation he had with somebody. But the biggest thing though that comes to mind is, well, number one, it's like, God, we cry over the littlest things right now. Everything is just so PC, and it's just like, he said a couple of words. Granted, I don't applaud these words. I don't condone racism, prejudice of any kind. I do not condone it at all. But that being said, it's just like, he just said a couple of things, and I don't know. I just find it baffling, and especially it didn't happen recently. Like when the stuff happened with Mel Gibson, when he was saying his stuff, that just happened for that time period back in 2010. It just happened, and it just got released. This happened years ago, and now we're gonna throw it out there. So this is almost like a political sabotage. And I don't know, I'm really baffled by the whole thing. Just the way it just plays out, the way we just kind of overdo it, I think, emotionally, as a country, I guess you could say. So I guess, the first thing that comes to mind is...
Well, let me ask you this, Josh. What do you...
Yeah. Oh, I am about speakers. I don't know, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ask you this though, I know there are allegations out there about what Hulkster did, and we're gonna get to all that. Like you said, it's a couple years ago. A lot of very PC environment now. What do you think of the WWE deleting every mention of his name from social media, from the history books of the World Championship, from WrestleMania website, the Hall of Fame alumni? He has basically got the Chris Benoit treatment. Do you think that was too far, or was that justified?
No, I think that's taken it way too far. And as a matter of fact, on the WWE Network, you can still catch up Chris Benoit matches. and you can still catch Chris Benoit, memorabilia on there. I mean, I'm sure they don't celebrate him by any means, but there are matches still available on pay-per-views and probably old Raws or what have you on the network. So, I mean, I think for all that, especially the Hall of Fame, that belongs to him. He gave that to honor the years of service he gave as an entertainer. Especially he was a main eventer for 9 WrestleManias in a row. From the first WrestleMania to WrestleMania 9, came back at WrestleMania 18 and headlined with The Rock, which some would debate which should have been the last match, other than Triple H and Jericho. But no, I think that's taken it way too far. I think that's just ridiculous. I think right now, I do kind of think it's going to cool down probably within a week or two, if not maybe a little longer, and then things will maybe start to go back to normal. I will say this much, and I don't know if I'm jumping the gun too much. I think this is a real missed opportunity by the WWE because they are struggling business-wise, both with ratings and the network, where they could easily, and I thought of this, I mentioned this to friends, a while ago about the CM Punk thing, when CM Punk did his podcast this past November, and then Vince McMahon did his thing with Stone Cold on the network, where there was so much opportunity to make a storyline of it, even if the guy's out of the company, because the company's struggling. So I don't know. It's really confusing why they go in the direction they go, and I could definitely go into that in a little bit.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and switch over real quick to Shawn. And Shawn, I want you to ask you the same questions I asked Josh, just to get the ball rolling for us. And I'm sure we'll talk about this in depth. But just to get the ball rolling, the same questions I asked Josh. When you first heard about this, did WWE go too far? And what are your thoughts on the whole ordeal of the elite allegations against the Hulkster?
Well, I found out when you tagged me on Facebook at 6:30. Was waking up. And I was half awake, and when I saw it, at first I thought maybe it was from Kayfabe News. I don't know if anyone, if a lot of the listeners don't know what that is, but it's kind of like the Onion News. They kind of make up their own news for comedy in the sport of wrestling. So that's what I thought at first. So I read it, and then it was just almost beyond shock because, as you said, man, they gave him the Chris Benoit treatment, which I think we can all agree with the Chris Benoit treatment. I mean, that's pretty extreme. So I had to find out for myself if that was true, and sure enough, I go to WWE.com. I did type in Hulk Hogan for search, and he had a couple results come up. Went into the Hall of Fame page, and yeah, sure enough, under the H, there was no Hulk Hogan. Went to the Tough Enough, and for judges, it just had Daniel Bryan and Page. So at that time, it's like, oh my God, something definitely went down. I'm beyond shocked. I mean, yeah, Hulk Hogan in WWE have had their issues in the past. He's kind of come and gone. But at the same time, Hulk Hogan and I'll go back all the way to the World Wrestling Federation, went hand in hand. Hulk Hogan, the WWF back in the 80s, they just went hand in hand. You couldn't imagine one without the other. And even this past year, Hulk Hogan had an appreciation night in Madison Square Garden with the WWE.
Oh, yeah.
So, at that point, you're thinking everything is great. And then when I heard these alleged allegations, and I think we can all agree, we in no way, shape, or form condone or agree with Hulk Hogan's opinions or how he was talking or anything like that. But at the same time, he was not aware that he was being recorded, to my knowledge. And it was, and this is where I'm a little confused, man. Maybe you can help me with it. Mm-hmm. He originally made these comments 8 years ago.
That's what Hulk Hogan's statement says, and I believe that what I believe what he is referring to, because there's two different situations, basically. I think Hogan is referring to
12 and 8 years ago, so I'm just trying to...
Yeah, the Hulk Hogan statement says 8 years ago, which I believe is when he was secretly recorded by Bubba the Love Sponge and his wife Heather Clem during the sex tape that Hogan was unaware of what was taking place. Those are when the comments about Brooke and her boyfriend, that was 8 years ago. There was an interview in 2012 that Hulk Hogan did with DJ Who Kid, and in that interview they asked him about that promo, Booker T, Hulk Hogan, we're coming to get you, and that's the 2012. Some people, because they're misinformed, and in the social media day and age, you want to lash out and be a part of the, let's bring down the latest celebrity, whether it's Bill Cosby or whoever. People are quoting the 2012 interview as what Hulk Hogan is being charged with, these allegations. In fact, it's not that. It is this sex tape that the jury, because Hulk Hogan is suing Gawker, the media company, for releasing his sex tape, like parts of it. He is suing them for $100 million to not release that sex tape. Obviously, he does not want that out there. The jurors got to watch that sex tape for the court case, and because of that, somebody in the jury or somebody in that courtroom leaked this information to the media of what was supposedly, allegedly said in that transcript. So the main thing what Hogan is referring to as his 8 years ago is this alleged information in this sex tape.
Okay. Well, and regardless, in my opinion, whether it was 8 years ago, 3 years ago, the fact of the matter is, it was years ago. Mm-hmm. And I don't at all, in any way, shape, or form, agree or like what the WWE did to Hulk Hogan, considering he is arguably probably the biggest star in wrestling history. And that's a discussion for another time, but I mean, that can literally be a whole discussion of where he, falls.
Right.
But here's also what really bothers me. This was a comment that obviously he regrets. Obviously it took how many years for us to finally hear about it, why it took this long, who knows. The thing that really bothers me is I was a huge CM Punk fan. And here's a guy that, in my opinion, deliberately walked out on his contract, and he's still not a lot mentioned in WWE, but I'm sure he's in the alumni page. And that just really irks me, because CM Punk, what he did, he intended to do it. He's even said since he doesn't regret it. And to me, it's like what Josh said. We just, so ridiculous how we have to really tiptoe around what you say around people. And I mean, it's all fair to say, I think the four of us are not easily offended. I mean, I can speak for myself. I am not really easily offended. I watch Seth MacFarlane, I watch Family Guy, Ted, and none of that stuff ever offends me. So I think WWE has definitely taken it too far. It's almost kind of like in football, say Joe Montana made these comments 10 years ago, and the NFL just decided, well, he made these comments years ago. We're a public company. We don't want any negative press. We're going to take him off the Hall of Fame page, never mention him again, never mention that he's 4-0 in the Super Bowl or anything like that. And I kind of compare it like that, or even, if Michael Jordan made comments, imagine wiping him away from the history books or no mentions at the Hall of Fame page. So I really want to be careful of my wording, but I am almost disgusted by WWE for doing that. I mean, Chris Benoit, again, we can have a whole other discussion about how Benoit and whether or not them not mentioning him, agreed or not. But the fact of the matter is, he is not at all mentioned. And they're giving, to me, it seems like what Hulk Hogan did in WWE's eyes, that's just as bad as what Benoit did. And in no way, shape, or form. And, this was done years ago. Hogan really seems like he turned his life around. He got remarried. He legitimately seemed happy. Even when he was on WWE TV, he looked happy to be back, in his words, home again. So, yeah, I'm pretty disgusted with WWE. Hopefully, like Josh says, I can definitely see this dying down, giving it maybe hopefully a couple months, bring him back. I think WWE could have just easily, you kind of said it at the beginning, man. We had the disclaimer, whatever our opinions are, does not reflect, never submit entertainment.
Right.
In WWE, that's really, in my opinion, all WWE had to do. We in no way, agree or condone with Terry Bollea, a.k.a. Hulk Hogan's statement. And, I mean, again, I haven't heard from a lot of wrestling fans, but from most of them, they weren't offended, and they're disgusted with WWE. And, again, I understand WWE wants to be a public company. They got stockholders and all these other people to answer to, but, I don't know. Like I said, right now I'm just kind of really disgusted with WWE, and I feel bad for Hulk Hogan. I feel bad for the guy. So, I don't know, hopefully, that's really all I'd say at this point.
Okay. Well, let's jump over to Mike. We talked briefly earlier. I think you might have a different opinion, so let's go ahead and get to that. Mike, what are your thoughts? Same thing. When you first heard about Hulk Hogan severing ties with WWE, then you found out why they're severing ties, then that Hulk Hogan got the Chris Benoit treatment, and then all the information that has come out since that point. What were your thoughts?
Well, right away I heard Bobby Heenan screaming Hulkamania is dead. All jokes aside now, honestly, I was shocked. Like, the firing, I was like, okay. I was like, wait, what, he's fired? And usually when I see something posted, I never click it to read it because it just, carries me to, 5 different fucking pages, and you gotta go through a bunch of different shit. So, this time I clicked, and I'm like, oh, shit. I was shocked, but then when I read that he was, I guess the word we should use is scrubbed.
Right.
When I read he was scrubbed, I was like, holy, that's when I read to see what he said. Like, he was scrubbed? Well, what the fuck did he say? And, I mean, like Sean said, someone could say nigger, right in front of me, and I'm half I don't get offended. When you grow up with your mom calling you one all the time, I mean, it really doesn't matter if anyone else does this shit. So, I mean, it doesn't offend me, but do I agree with the WWE scrubbing them? No, I don't. I don't agree with them scrubbing Chris Benoit either. As, whether or not it's true or not, he is a part of history, no matter how bad it was. You can't delete him from history. So, no, do I agree with them terminating him? Yeah. But I don't agree with them scrubbing him. However, I understand the decision. So, I'm not going to come down. Josh, do you watch football at all?
Not much. A little bit of UFC, but not much.
And Matt, I know you don't. But, I'll use an example. The whole domestic battery thing that happened last year, Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, suspended Ray Rice for 2 days. And then the tape came out to where, it showed him, I'm sure you've probably even seen a vine of it, Matt, where he knocked his woman out in the elevator with one punch and dragged her out. And then once everybody's seen what it was, they're like, oh my God, that's all you did? Da-da-da. So since then, the NFL has been punishing extremely harsh rather than, for something like this, it's better for them to over-punish than to under-punish. Because if they only do a slap on the wrist or something that, we as fans may think is legit, then you get the NAACP, and then Jesse showed up, and they get the, you know, backlash from not doing what they should have done. Then they go ahead and do it, and people are like, oh, well, he just did that because they were criticized about it. You know, they don't really care. They're just doing that to look good for the public. Where at least in this situation, you know, depending, you know, that it was preemptive. No, we're done with them. Bam, no one can say shit. You know what I mean? And I understand what you're saying as far as loyalty, but and I'm sure Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan will talk, and they'll still be friends. Hell, they may have even met and discussed this or talked on the phone for hours in the wee hours of the night about this and how they're going to go about this before it even happened. You know, Vince may have given him a personal call, but they're not going to release that. So, I mean, like Shawn was stating, and we talked earlier, and I said I wanted to save a lot of it for the podcast, it is a publicly traded company. And, you know, I mean, when you look at, and also you got to take into account the times that we're in, when every other day you have a video of a cop beating up a black person, and I know it happens to white people too, but there's just been so much outcry from black people to where they're like, we're done. And, you know, I don't get offended like a lot of black people do, but, you know, I read comments on this shit, and, you know, it hits home with them, Matt. You know, like there's some people right now who's like, oh, who gives a shit? It's Hulk Hogan, big deal. It's just wrestling. It's fake, blah, 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 you know. But to you, this fucked up your entire day. And there's, you know, black people, when they hear about some shit like this, it really fucks with them. There was a situation at work where, you know, someone was talking about another coworker of ours that was black, and then right away, one of our, man, that's racist, and like it fucked up his entire day. So I mean, I definitely understand, and especially if you look at it from the, you know, if you step on the other side of it, he offended, and you could say even betrayed an entire race of people, whether it was 8 years ago, and whether he was drunk or not, and something I've been told a lot, and you know, it is kind of true. You know, a drunk mind speaks the truth. You know, the only thing that's different when you're drunk is you don't have a filter and you don't hold back. You say what you feel. You know, do some stupid shit. You know, you can say he was drunk. Well, you know, I've never, you know, drank a beer and been like, fucking beaner. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, be a little careful with some of the words you say.
It's not like alcohol and drugs turn you into a racist.
Right.
So
that's fair.
You know, hey, I want to, you know, I get where, you know, Hogan's coming from. Very angry at that point. And when you're angry, you say a lot of things, and it's not that, a lot of people say, oh, I was angry, I didn't mean to say that. But you may not have meant to say it, but you did mean it. You know, those thoughts didn't come out of the blue. It's just stuff that he was able to hold back. So, I mean, even though it was 8 years ago and it was recorded privately, it still got out there. You know, if it came out that he, you know, murdered somebody or something, that would still make him a murderer. And do I believe Hogan's a racist? No, not at all. I don't. I just, you know, it just, you know, what it does, it harms. The fact that he's not a racist, it does a lot of harm, because a lot of black people believe that all white people are secretly racist, and this looks like it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it sucks, but I definitely understand the WWE stance on it. I mean, you know, I don't agree with them scrubbing it, but I won't scrutinize them for it.
Okay.
That was well said, Mike.
Yeah, that was pretty good, Mike. That was pretty well said, and I agree with a lot of your points. I guess for my side of it, before we get into like a full roundtable discussion, today was a very, like you said, Mike, it fucked up my whole day. I'll tell you why. I woke up this morning, you know, did my normal routine, took a shower, brushed my teeth, all that crap. I put on without any. What was that? Took my vitamins and my prayers. That's right. I bleed red and yellow. Today I die.
I can contest to your bad day.
Yeah, Sean got the brunt of it. I was complaining all day, but I'll tell you what, and I'll tell you why. Because I get dressed this morning, right? And what I pick on without seeing Facebook, without seeing anything, I pick out my Hulk Hogan. The Hulk Hogan Day, Madison Square Garden, Hulk Hogan January 23rd, 1984 t-shirt. I pick out the Hulk Hogan Represent t-shirt, put it on, come downstairs, get my iPod for work. I'm like, you know what? Let me go ahead and check Facebook real fast because I got a couple tags, I got a couple things on here. I'm going to check this before I head out the door. I check it, and all I see is Hulk Hogan and WWE sever ties. Hogan is gone. So immediately in my head, I'm thinking, what the fuck? Because, I mean, let's not sugarcoat this. Anybody who listens to this podcast by now knows the Hulkamaniac that I am, and I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not going to be ashamed of that. So, I'm thinking, what the fuck did happen that Hulk Hogan, who is on every Tuesday night, on Tough Enough as a judge, who is supposed to be coming back to wrestle at WrestleMania next year, what the hell happened? Why is he gone? So I click it, never thinking that I was going to read that Hogan was released from his contract because of racial slurs. Never would have thought that I would read that headline, that Hogan was being targeted allegedly as being a racist. It gets deeper. I start to read this shit and I see they're saying overnight Hogan has been scrubbed from all of WWE social media. He got the Chris Benoit treatment. Yeah. You can call it scrubbed if you want. Fuck it, I'm calling it the Chris Benoit treatment because that's what it is. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You can call it a fancy name, scrubbed. It's the fucking Chris Benoit treatment. So that's what it is. So I go on there, me being the, like Sean, like you did, I would immediately jumped off of that. I didn't even finish reading the article. I went over to the counter. I went to WWEshop.com first because I wanted to see if my Hogan merchandise was still available. It was not. I go to WWE.com, it's gone. I'm looking everywhere and I'm like, okay, so it's true. Well, I gotta go to work. I ain't got time for this. So I go to work. And I'm at work probably 20 minutes, and I punch in the break right away and go in the break room and go back on my phone. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I ain't working today. This fucked my day up. Now, maybe for people that don't understand, let me explain something to you. If you have a bad argument with your wife, it fucks your day up. You have a bad argument with your husband, it fucks your day up. For me, I'm married, and if I have an argument with my wife, it fucks my day up. I have an argument with my kids, it fucks my day up. If I see Hulk Hogan leaves the goddamn WWE, it fucks my day up. So this shit fucked my day up. So I go in the break room, I'm looking there, and then I start seeing the statements coming out, and then I see the allegations, and it getting deeper, the transcript comes out, and I'm talking to Sean throughout the day, and Sean's hearing me. I'm trying my hardest not to throw my fucking computer monitor at work or cuss on this instant messenger at work to lose my job over this, because to me it is that serious. And I'll tell you why it's that serious to me. And maybe you're listening to this podcast, you don't understand, and that's fine. But Hulk Hogan, to me, I'm a 33-year-old man. I started watching wrestling at 5 years old. And since 5 years old, Hulk Hogan, now I'm not talking about Terry Bollea right now. I'm talking about Hulk Hogan, the character. That character has been my idol since I was 5 years old. Red and yellow. It's red and yellow running through these veins since I was 5 years old. I have no ashamed of that. I'm not ashamed of that. I have no shame whatsoever. And I will preach that every day as I wear my Hulk Hogan shirts. And Sean and Mike, you can both test. I have like fucking 50 Hulk Hogan shirts. My basement is like a shrine to Hulk Hogan because that's my idol. And I have no shame of that. But with that said, I read these comments. I'm reading the transcript. And I start thinking about Terry Bollea, the guy behind the character. Because I don't know Terry Bollea. I know Hulk Hogan. I know what I see on TV. So I start reading this and I start thinking, what the fuck? What if the guy that I have idolized my entire life is a racist? My children, my stepchildren, are mixed. They're white and black. Mike is one of my best friends on the podcast with me. Mike is mixed. I've known Mike for damn near 20 years. I do not see color. I never have. I never will. But if Hulk Hogan does, that's gonna change things. So I start reading the transcripts, and I start putting pieces together. And I'm not one of those people that's a blind Hulkamaniac. I'm not a blind anything. If you do me wrong, my family wrong, my friends wrong, my company never submit wrong, I'm not gonna blindly turn the other cheek. I'm not gonna look the other way. I'm a Christian, but I'm not an idiot. So I start reading this, and I'm like, if Hulk Hogan is really racist. This is going to change my entire life because I cannot idolize someone who does not like black people. My children are half black. So I'm reading all this shit, and I started putting the pieces together. These allegations of what Hogan said took place during his divorce from Linda. Now, Linda has taken this man 8 years ago for every penny that he's worked his ass off for. 9 back surgeries to get this money. She's taken it. 20 years of marriage. She's called it off. She's dating some younger 19-year-old, 20-year-old boy. His daughter, Brooke, who Hogan loves with all his heart, and you can watch Hogan Knows Best to see that. This man has put millions into her singing career. She chose Linda in the divorce battle. A child should not choose one parent or the other. Based on Hogan's comments, that's all I'm going off of, it appears that Brooke chose the mother over the father. I am a father. Mike, you're a father. Shawn, you're a father. If your child chose the other parent over you, imagine the pain that would come from that. Imagine the pain that comes from a divorce. Imagine all these things. And now Hogan has a book out before all this allegation bullshit came out. Has a book. And he talks about how deep and dark in depression he was. And we talked about this last week about depression. Hogan was talking about how depressed he was, how he wanted to commit suicide. Now he's in this dark place, wants to commit suicide. He's talking about Brooke, how Brooke fucked him over, and she went with this black guy, and she sided with Linda Hogan, or Linda Belay, or whatever. She sided with that. Now, let me ask you, if you guys are in this position, this is the rhetorical question, but if you are in a situation, is it okay to take out your anger and say one word that's derogatory? One word that to a lot of people, a whole culture of people, is a horrible, horrible word and should never be uttered. And I in no way condone that word or any racism. Because like I said, my children are mixed. Mike is mixed. And not just black people or African Americans. I have Mexican friends. I have all colors, all races, all everything. I don't care. But Hogan or Terry Bollea in his position, in his life, contemplating suicide, depths of despair, says one word 8 years ago. Now we're going to put this man under scrutiny. Everybody listening to this podcast at one point or another has been in that despair, has been in that place where you say something you know damn well you shouldn't say, but you fucking say it because you don't care anymore. That's where Hogan is. The only difference is when you say it, Mike, when you say it, Shawn, when you say it, Josh, when I say it, we don't have a fucking person recording us to put it on the internet. Because we don't get, nobody cares about what the fuck we think. We're not public figures. A public figure suddenly loses that lack of privacy. Now, I don't subscribe to that shit. I don't think because you chose a profession where we watch you on TV or listen to you on the radio that you lose your lack of privacy. No, you're still a human being. You still have a right to the same fucking privileges and same rights that everybody else does. So he was recorded in a horrible moment saying something bad. And no one said it never came out. 8 years goes by. This guy now is a born-again Christian. This guy now is married to the love of his life. He has rekindled his relationship with his daughter, with his son. He's back home into the WWE. He's on top of the world, about to go for WrestleMania 32 main event. He's going, it's time to break that 93,000 record. This guy is on top of the world. And one thing comes out. And that one statement that he made 8 years ago in the pit of despair is now all over the fucking social media. And what does Vince McMahon, the WWE, you can call it WWE, but what does Vince McMahon, the guy who makes the charge, the guy who Hulk Hogan helped make, he made that company, regardless, we could argue till I'm blue in the face, Hulk Hogan made the WWE. What does Vince McMahon do? Gives him the Chris Benoit treatment. And yes, Mike, you mentioned it too, and I mentioned it before, loyalty. Mike, me and you have been best friends for damn near 20 years. You've done some horrible fucking things in your life, and I know you won't shy away from it because you have. And I have never turned my back on you. And we're on my podcast, Never Submit Entertainment. Never Submit Entertainment makes this podcast. And I have a movie coming out worldwide in May 13, 2016, when it comes out. My name's going to be all over the world. Me saying this on this podcast puts me in public scrutiny. Me supporting Mike after things that you've done puts me in public scrutiny. But I will never turn my back on people that are friends of me, that have supported me, and have helped make me who I am today. And Vince McMahon did that. The blink of an eye gave him the Chris Benoit treatment. That's to me that's inexcusable. I don't give a fuck. That's inexcusable to me. You not turn your back on people that have been loyal to you. 1991, the steroid trial. Vince McMahon went to steroid trial. Hulk Hogan had to be subpoenaed by the FBI, the federal government, before he turned his back on Vince McMahon. And even then, he lied under oath. He did not want to turn on Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon gets a PR scare. Oh, there goes Hulk Hogan. Wipe him off the face of the planet. Doesn't exist anymore. Never mattered. That's bullshit, man.
I can almost all but promise you that they had a long, lengthy conversation before this happened. And more than likely, it's something that they both agreed would be right.
Let me ask you this real quick. Let me ask you this real fast. What does scrubbing Hulk Hogan from the record books accomplish? If you go on the street right now and you ask somebody who's Hulk Hogan, are they going to magically forget? Oh, well, I thought he was part of WWE one time, but shit, I went on WWE.com. He wasn't there, so I must be wrong.
What it does is that by them taking this aggressive of an action, it keeps, like I said, it keeps all those organizations off of them and from, like, criticizing the shit out of them. And then them losing, a lot of viewership, not viewership, but, support. And they don't want to look, they don't want to look insensitive to an entire race of people who, it seems, lately have been going through a lot, especially with that shit that just happened with that one chick with the dead mugshot.
Sandra Bland, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it saves.
Well, that's another thing, too.
Real quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You know how you said, since 5 years old, that's my hero, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine how the black kid, since 5 years old, who is 33 now, looked up to Hogan, who idolized him, who actually took this as a jab to the heart.
But they shouldn't have, because Hulk Hogan did not say this about a race. He said this in derogatory, and I do not condone what Hulk Hogan said. It was despicable. It was a horrible thing for him to say, for Terry Bollea to say. Those words should never be uttered. But he didn't say about a race. He said about one guy in anger. That's it. That's all it was. He didn't say it about a race. You see black people on Dennis Rodman. You see George Foreman, Virgil, for fuck's sakes, saying.
I agree. I agree. I don't think Hogan's racist. And then here's another thing too. Well, what would you do if protect his his privacy if your son came up to you while you were wearing a Hulk Hogan shirt? If he read about it, like, how can you support him? He hates black people, and I'm black. And then you try to explain it to him, and then he says, "Yeah, but still." People, you get where I'm going with that.
I do, and let me clarify that too. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm not saying that African Americans who heard this statement should not be upset. I'm not saying that, because like you said, if you heard that, and because of the world we live in, there's a lot of sensitivity towards African Americans right now, and rightfully so, because a lot of horrible things are happening to that culture. So I'm not saying that they should be not affected, or we should be insensitive to their feelings, because we shouldn't be, because everybody's feelings matter. I'm saying that Hulk Hogan made a mistake and should not have his career vanquished and looked down upon because of a mistake he made 8 years ago. I think Hulk Hogan deserves the African American community apology publicly for saying these things. I think that the WWE needs to stand behind Hulk Hogan and say, look, we don't condone what Hogan said or Bollea said. We don't want any of that negativity in our company. And going forward, if anything ever comes out like this, he's gone, because we don't want that. But we know that Mr. Bollea is a born-again Christian that has changed his life since 8 years ago. And in America, and in fucking God-given country, we believe in second chances. So fuck it, man. He made a mistake. Let's move the fuck on.
And it was 8 years ago, too.
That's what I'm saying, man. If he said this shit last night, if it came out last night, then I still don't believe him and scrubbing him with the Chris Benoit treatment. But if it came out last night, you fire his ass, because this is 2015. There's a lot going on in this world, and that kind of behavior, that kind of ignorance should not be tolerated. But it was 8 years ago, and he was in a dark and deep place, and he made a mistake. And that's all this is. And everybody on this podcast, everybody listening, You cannot look in the mirror and say you have never made a mistake before. Something you said something you shouldn't have. You did something you shouldn't have.
But, hey Matt, here's a question for you. This was what I was going back about before about the whole CM Punk thing and a few things that were happening in the wrestling business in general. If this was if this was like, I was like trying to think of her years. I was like, oh God, I'm a brain fart here. But if this was 1997, remember the Bret Hart thing, the screw job, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And remember the exact words, that Vince said. Bret screwed Bret. And then JR, when he's doing the interview with Vince McMahon, he's like, if Bret Hart wanted to come back, would you let him come back? And Vince said, in that interview, yes, I would. Because this is a crazy business we're in. And of course, at that time frame, Vince was struggling, right? They were losing the ratings to Nitro. They were the USA Network almost canceled Raw. So now think of it this way: if the tides were turned a little bit, and this was 1997, and these recordings happened, or this whole scandal broke out with Hulk Hogan, would have Vince really let Hogan go in that fashion, or would he have kept him on because I need Hogan, I need those ratings? He's still a draw for me.
In my opinion, I don't think that Vince would let him go. Sean, you mentioned this earlier. Sean, you want to take this, Sean? Because you mentioned this earlier about John Cena. Do you want to take over real fast?
Yeah. This question I didn't hear.
What was that?
Could you cliff notes of his question? I didn't really hear it.
Oh yeah, basically implying that in 1997 Bret Hart, left WWF for WCW, and Vince let him go, but said he would take him back, implying that if this was in that time frame and the WWF was in those dire straits where they needed all the star power they could get, would Vince McMahon have terminated Hulk Hogan over these comments if these were made at the time? Or you can take in modern day times to modernize it. If this was John Cena, the poster boy of the WWE, would he have been scrubbed from WWF or WWE? I mean, would he have been terminated and never existed, or would Vince McMahon, because he needs John Cena, kept him along and only did this because Hogan is a 61-year-old man who, by namesake, really isn't the draw he used to be?
Right.
Sean, take it over.
The same thing about I basically made the point. Seth Rollins was in a little scandal a few months ago where, and I don't even know the full details, but basically he took some nude photos of himself and somebody released them. And that's really all I heard about it. I mean, there was no punishment. I mean, obviously he's still the world champion. He wasn't kept off TV or anything like that. And, that just kind of was, a little irksome. In that area too, and like I said, and if I had John Cena said that, even if John Cena's been now in the WWE for 13 years, had he said this 8 years ago, I'm sure they would have taken action on John Cena, but I certainly don't believe they would have released him, and in no way would they have scrubbed him from the history books. And after listening to Mike earlier, again, I don't like what WWE did, but I do understand it. Just distance yourself from Hogan for a little bit, kind of like what the NFL was doing. But in no way, I just do not agree or condone the scrubbing them from history, because I understand your point, Mike, but I disagree with Matt. I agree with Matt. He's just such a well-known name that, it was kind of like the thing with Chris Benoit. It's like, well, we still know Chris Benoit was in the history books. We still know that, as a wrestling fan, Chris Benoit main evented WrestleMania, and now they're trying to do the same thing to Hogan. Like, well, forget that he main evented the first 9 WrestleManias. I mean, I don't think any superstar has done that since. So, that was basically my stance on that earlier. Like, if there was a current WWE superstar that's, Triple H is high on, I think they would have taken action, but not nearly the effect that Hogan's being treated.
Well, let me ask you that question, Mike. Would if this was John Cena, the poster boy of 2015 WWE, and he makes a derogatory comment 8 years ago, Does that? And it comes out now. Does Vince McMahon terminate John Cena and scrub him from the history books?
Absolutely. And here's why I'm going to say he does. Okay, because scrubbing from the history books doesn't do anything for ratings. You know.
You think he terminates him though?
Yes, I honestly do, and this comes back to, you know, like this. I believe this was strictly a business decision, and
oh, no doubt.
I know, you know, I know you're angry as fuck at Vince McMahon right now, but you know,
Vince knows it too.
Imagine how hard of a decision that was for him to do that. Like that's why I can almost all but guarantee him and Hogan talked before any of this even was leaked.
I definitely agree.
Not the call.
I actually said earlier, I think this was more. I just had this feeling, and I really have nothing to back it up. I really don't think this was a Vince decision per se. I mean, I'm sure he had the final say, but I really think this was more of the, you know, Department of the Public Relations, which I think Stephanie's a part of.
I think Hogan gave the thumbs up on it. I think Vince called Hogan like, hey, you know, or maybe even Hogan may have even called Vince like, hey, you know, I found out. Sorry, there's a car that just went by. So I think Hogan maybe called Vince and said, hey, this recording's about to come out, blah, blah, blah. It says this, that. You know, I think they discussed it. And, you know, I guarantee you Vince knows what's going on in the NFL and the scrutiny Roger Goodell has has been under over something like domestic violence, which doesn't rank up there with the racism that's been going on. So I guarantee you that the fans, like yourself, Matt, are more upset about this than Hulk Hogan.
Well, let me ask you this, Mike. You haven't touched on this. What about Hogan's privacy? Is this not an invasion of privacy? What is it not when you're at home or at a friend's house and you believe that you are not being recorded, that you believe with your friend you can speak freely? If you come to my house and you're upset and you're hurt and you're you know, saying things that maybe aren't the most appropriate for the world to hear, but you think you're at my house, a guy you've known for years, you think you can speak freely, and I record you and put that shit online. Am I not invading your privacy? Am I not being, you know, a bad guy by doing this? Why is that okay? Because he's a celebrity. Why is that okay to do that?
It is
regardless of what he said.
It's an invasion of privacy, and it's, you know, it's not like he's being jailed for it or anything like that. But even though it is an invasion of privacy, and it's not like, you know, a court trial to where someone can say objection, and, you know, don't, you know, where the judge says, you know, I forget the words they use. I haven't watched Law and Order in a while, but, you know, to where when someone objects and they're like, okay, so the jury's just supposed to just not take that into account. Well,
right.
We're not in the courtroom, and it's the public, and it was an invasion of privacy. 100,000% invasion of privacy, but it got leaked. That's the thing. That's like, you know, like, let's say there was a video of one of our friends who was straight and they were having sex with a man, and then that got leaked. Does that not make him gay? Because it was just, you know, two consenting males having sex, and it was a tape that.
That's a little different, though. You don't get pissed off at your wife and go have sex with a man.
I'm saying that's how people will look at it. Like, oh, well, you know.
I don't think so, though. I think that when everybody in this podcast and listen to this conversation, like I've said a million times, can vouch. They have gotten mad and said something stupid they should not have said.
Right,
why is Hogan being held to a different standard? Yes, he used a derogatory term, which is not condonable. He should not have used. But why does that one word, because the guy was upset and said a stupid ass thing, why should that ruin a 37-year career?
Well, I think
there's standards. Like Charles Barkley, you know, remember when I don't know if you remember Charles Barkley said, I am not a role model. But in a sense you are. Yeah. You're held to much higher standards.
And why is that? Because he's on TV?
Yeah. Like, you notice, like...
You mean because someone is on TV, suddenly they're held to higher standards as a human being? Because they're on TV, suddenly, because our fucking... society makes them this higher than figure, they're held as human beings to a higher standard. They can't have flaws? They can't make mistakes?
I think the one thing...
Their hero.
I was going to say the one thing to keep in mind too is I really don't think this is a final decision by Vince. It's like you guys mentioned before with the shareholders, with the the company going public, like over a decade ago. Vince has to answer to these people, and it's kind of like if you guys saw like probably 2 days ago all over social media, where Triple H and Stephanie did this little Skype thing with this little kid. You guys may have came across it, and
yeah, I seen that.
Gave him the contract. It was the most cheesiest thing ever. The thing they did last year for that cancer kid was beautiful. What they did with this one kid, it was just so cheesy. It was like almost like, okay, what was the point of that? They gave this little kid a contract. All right, whatever. I think it's just they're trying so hard, almost trying way too hard to be a cookie cutter company, where it's just everything across the board is sugar coated. So in a way, you can't applaud. In a way, you can applaud the WWE for taking action, right away and disbanding Hulk Hogan and severing ties, if you will. But I don't know. I think that's it. It's like we take everything to the extreme and we overreact and everything like that. And I think everyone's making a lot of good points. Also, too, we keep mentioning with Chris Benoit. The one thing that I'm thinking of is O.J. Simpson. Of course, for my personal opinion, the guy, killed 2 people, or at least he was associated to a double murder, and he's in the NFL Hall of Fame. To some, fans, he's still celebrated. He's still mentioned in the Naked Gun movies. He's done a plethora of commercials way back in the late 70s and early 80s. So, I mean, the guy, in a way, he's still celebrated. And this, I mean, from OJ to Chris Benoit to Hogan, who just said a couple of stupid things, not even yesterday. He said them 8 years ago.
Right.
So I think it's just today's day and age is so. The terminology I was using before, I think you might have been thinking of was PC. I was just thinking things are just so politically correct today. We're just so afraid to hurt somebody's feelings, and everything is being tweeted, everything's on Facebook, everything's being video cammed, everything's being recorded. Just drop your guard, and you know what? It's just it is what it is, and that's why I used the example before with the late '90s with Bret Hart. If the NWO was on Raw in the late '90s, join me in a bizarro universe, right? If the roles were reversed, would have Vince fired Hogan, or in this case, would they have fired Cena? I don't think so.
No, absolutely not.
It also goes to the point too. Remember when RVD got caught with marijuana by the cop? RVD just got the world title and the ECW title when they were going to make ECW a platform on Sci-Fi Channel. He's on top of the world. He's the man of the company. He got caught with marijuana when he got pulled over by the cop. Him and Sabu. Not even within 24 hours, they stripped him the belt. He had to drop the title, I believe, to Edge and then to the Big Show. Both belts. And he was on a 30-day suspension. And RVD said, "You know what? Fuck this company. I'm gonna let my contract expire." And he walked. He left. Which I don't blame him. I thought that was so fucked up. So it's the same scenario. They're just they have to cater to these fucking shareholders. It's almost like when you're making a movie, a big Hollywood studio movie. The director and the producers don't always have the final say. It's these other fucking executives that have the final say. It's like, okay, we're gonna make a passionate little drama about a boy and a girl that love each other and grew up together. And then you know what? We're gonna put some fucking robots in it too. It's like, what the fuck, man? We had a solid, good script here. Yeah, but this will look better. This will make more money. This will make us look better. All right, whatever. And then destroys the shit. So it's just a lot of scenarios. So at the end of the day, I think Vince he had to answer to other people, but I also agree that
Well, what's funny thing about that, Josh, is you made a great point about O.J. Simpson, and I don't know if anybody listening to this realizes this, but Mike Tyson is in the WWE Hall of Fame, and Mike Tyson is a convicted rapist.
There you go.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but in my opinion, raping somebody and violating their body is 10 times worse than calling somebody a name, no matter how bad that name is and how bad the history associated with that name is.
Hey.
When you violate somebody and you put your body into theirs forcefully, that's fucked up and a hell of a lot worse than a name, but that guy's in the Hall of Fame. He's getting fucking celebrated.
Amen. So is Donald Trump too.
Yeah, Donald Trump. Look at the shit Donald Trump is saying, but that fucker's in the Hall of Fame too.
And on the website.
And didn't something about Scott Hall in his early days? Didn't he take a life?
Yeah,
oh shit! I don't know about that.
Yeah, he shot somebody.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay. Because I remember there was an E60 on him, and there was he admitted to something like that.
Yeah, it was on
he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
what was that?
There you go. I didn't.
Yeah, it's on YouTube too. It's the ESPN documentary on Scott Hall. He admits shooting somebody, killing him. I think it was out of self-defense, but regardless, yeah.
And it was before he did DDP yoga and everything. This was probably like 4 or 5 years ago. This was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow, I didn't know anything about that, but yeah, okay, there you go. There's Scott Hall, self-defense or not, he killed somebody. He's in the Hall of Fame.
Well, nonetheless, Matt, like I said, and no one can disagree with this because it's the truth. It's the current time we live in.
Right, okay, Donald Trump is on the news every fucking night making an ass of himself with his stupid-ass comments.
It's happening to Mexicans, though. It's what's been happening. Look what just happened in South Carolina with the Confederate flag. You know, I mean, it's the time. If this was released the next day it came out 8 years ago, this wouldn't have been the punishment. It's the times we live in, and you have to act according to the times, and WWE feels like they're acting according to the times. Like I said, I don't agree with it, but I understand it. I'm not.
See, I don't understand it.
I don't think anyone should ever be scrubbed. You know, like, you don't see schools taking out shit about slavery and whatnot, which was a lot worse than Benoit winning the title at WrestleMania 21 or Hulk Hogan slamming Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3. Far more worse. But I don't agree with this. I don't agree with the Benoit treatment, the scrubbing of it. I do agree with the termination as of right now. And who knows? You know, I don't go on WWE.com, but you guys think it was Shawn or Josh that was saying that you can find Benoit matches, etc. on still. But shit. A while back, I remember it was when you were living by Old Chicago. I remember, like, right after that happened, we went on WWE.com and we couldn't find anything. Like, what the hell? The title just went from him to him, you know, and so I think this was just a preemptive thing, and I can almost guarantee you within a year, Hogan will be back in the record books. I definitely believe that.
Well, I'm sure once it blows over, he will, but to me, that's not the point. The point is what they've done to this man's legacy that he worked so hard for. To me, the point is...
WWE didn't to his legacy.
Who did it then? Who scrubbed him?
Still there. Whoever leaked this shit did this to his legacy.
But WWE is scrubbing him. WWE is terminating him for something that happened 8 years ago. Not 8 days ago. 8 years ago.
That's what I was saying. I think it's a sabotage.
I just think, like, whatever happened 8 years ago, you should not be... Like, if I did something 8 years ago, my job today that I was not employed by when I did this 8 years ago should not be able to terminate me for something that I did 8 years ago.
And we did say that, you and I were talking about that. That's how it feels. If we said something 8 years ago, and, you know, again, I know we're going to keep saying it, we're not saying what Hulk Hogan said wasn't terrible. It was horrible what he said.
Right, it's horrible.
But yeah, it would be like our job. You know, me and Matt work for the same company, and we work in the same building. You know, we talk every day that we work. It'd be like our job finding out we said something 8 years ago, and it got leaked, and we got fired for it, and they just scrubbed every memory that they ever. That's kind of. I think that's just what really just. You know, I know I keep saying that, but just the wiping of the history, and I really do hope they're just letting this cool off, and then gradually maybe bring them back in, you know, and then go from there. But that's just really what bothers me is just erasing the history.
I'm with you, Sean. I really think, and I love Hulk Hogan, I really think if I would have woke up and saw Hogan was released from his contract because of a comment he made, even if it was 8 years ago, I would think it's the dumbest damn decision to be made, but I would be like, okay, you know what? Because of the times, and I realize we're in this PC, pussy-fied America, so I realize, okay, fuck it. They released him, this shit will blow over. Next week, there'll be some other celebrity that Americans are trying to trash their life, and Hogan will be back to normal. He'll be back. Things are great. It's the fact that they went and scrubbed him, which is they've only done one time in history, and that was to Chris Benoit, who allegedly murdered his wife and child. You are comparing what Hulk Hogan said 8 years ago to somebody who murdered his wife and child. I'm sorry, there is no correlation between those two events.
Oh, no. There's no way that they're anywhere, like, even on the same level, on the same plane. However, I'll go to... And this is just me playing devil's advocate, and Matt probably wants to strangle me at this point for playing devil's
Not yet.
So much.
No, I like it. It makes for good entertainment on this podcast. If we all agree, this podcast will be boring, so keep it up. I'm having fun.
That's what they do at work. Earlier, and I was, you said, why is it, about if I said something or if he said something, but if you make, let's just say you make $50 an hour. That's more than what you make, but I'm not going to put what you make out there. But to get to make that much, you have to qualify. You have to meet certain qualifications. The more you make, the more qualifications you have to meet. So when you're making as much as Hogan makes, or any other celebrity, there's certain, criteria that you have to meet. Having a tape out there like that kind of disqualifies you. And then you were just talking about your job. Well, what if you had lied on your application and said, yeah, I don't have a felony, and then 8 years later it comes up, oh, you did have a felony. Someone comes and let's say you covered it up. Somehow, some way you're able to, cover it up, but someone comes and points out that felony. Your job will probably fire you for that. Even though it was 8 years ago, it's a felony. That's how you gotta look at this. This is like
Hogan didn't commit a felony, though.
What's that?
Hogan didn't commit a felony. Hogan said a stupid-ass comment in the privacy of his own...
It's the same. His comment in his line of work, in this line of work, is the same as a felony. I don't know if as far... I know at my old job, the Connection, felony for or any charge of theft would get you, you were unhireable. So if they found out, even if it was 8 years later, that, oh, you did steal something back in 2001, even, or we'll go back 8 years, back in 2007, you could still be fired. So it's different kinds of jobs. For a job, something that's in the public eye, something that's very public damaging, it's not acceptable. It's the equivalent of a felony.
Well, like I said, though, I mean, the firing thing, I think it's stupid, and I'm going to stand by that, because I think what happened 8 years ago that someone said in private, and that because some asshole leaked this footage has cost this man his job, I think that's fucked up. But, if WWE wanted to terminate him and say, hey, we don't condone racial, racism, whatever, we don't condone that, we have terminate Terry Bollea, I could say I don't understand it, but okay, you got to do what you got to do. You scrubbed him. You gave him the Chris Benoit treatment.
Right.
No, dude, you're not going to convince me that that's okay. It's just not okay. Not when you have Donald Trump in the Hall of Fame plastered all over your fucking WWE.com and shit, and he's saying all these crazy things about the Mexican culture, but that's okay. You have Mike Tyson, who's a convicted rapist. He's all over the place, and that's okay. But because Hulk Hogan said a comment 8 years ago that has to by bad fate, by bad timing, has to be involved when a lot of bad shit is happening in the African American culture. This happens, and in my opinion, if we're talking about that, really, Why are you focused so much on what Hulk Hogan said 8 years ago when there are so much more horrible things happening? That Sandra Bland woman was what happened to her, I'm not going to get specifics in a podcast, but what happened to her is a hell of a lot worse than what Hulk Hogan said.
Oh, yeah. They're worried about them shifting. Because there hasn't been any kind of backlash, like, thus far, probably because of the stance the WWE took. But it was funny that you say that, Matt, because when I was on Facebook, reading some of the comments that people were making on this, someone said, "Why are we worried about this when there's bigger things going on?
Exactly.
What about Sandra Bland?" And I'll send you a screenshot of it, and then you can post it on the Never Submit podcast page. That way the fans can see what I'm talking about as well. That way they know I'm not making.
Well, let me ask you this, Mike, because you're playing devil's advocate, and that's okay with me. So let me ask you this. Would it not have been better if Vince McMahon, or the WWE, whatever, and Hulk Hogan came out with a joint statement, apologized for what Hulk Hogan said, admitted it was wrong, and it was a horrible thing for him to say, and then said, but to make up for my failures, to make up for my mistake and my flaw, myself, in conjunction with the WWE, are going to do this for the African American community. And they say something, they're going to do something positive. Heaven forbid we in the world did something positive. We don't scrub a motherfucker from the website. We don't fire his ass. We say, you know what? We made a mistake. We're going to do something positive. We're going to, donate to an African American charity. We're going to give back to the community in some way. Why not do that? Why is it so much the fucking negativity and not like put a spin on that shit? Yeah, anything. Just do something positive with this instead of just fuck it. He said a bad word, guy. You're fired. You're scrubbed. Let's bitch about it for a day until the next thing comes up. No, Hogan needs to make it right with the community. There is no mistaking that. The guy made a horrible statement that got out and it offended a lot of people. He needs to make it right with the community. That does not mean he needs to lose his job, his livelihood, his legacy. It does not mean he needs to be scrubbed from the company that he built. We could argue that all day. He built that company. He needs to make it up to the community. But they're not doing that. Let's scrub him. Let's fire him. Let's give him the Benoit treatment. Man, dude, where's the positivity?
What I can definitely see happening is, Mike, you'll understand with the NFL, Adrian Peterson, got basically suspended for pretty much almost the entire season for how he chose to discipline his child. And again, that could be a different subject for another time of how, whether you agree or not of how to discipline your child. But the fact of the matter is that they had to distance themselves from, the NFL wanted to distance themselves from Adrian Peterson. Now, here we are almost a year later, and Adrian Peterson just got a new contract with the Minnesota Vikings. So I can definitely, the reason I bring that up is I can definitely maybe see, we're only really in day one of this whole thing leaking out. So, I mean, I could definitely see, hopefully, maybe, like, closer to WrestleMania, and, they could bring Hogan back or gradually bring Hogan back. Just letting the smoke, just letting the smoke clear, distance themselves, let this boil over. Because, like I said, we're still technically in day one of all this. But I can definitely see WWE bringing them back, and gradually. And yeah, I agree. I think Hogan also needs to do something, for the African American community, or kind of like what with Michael Vick, who was indicted on, a dogfighting scandal, even though a lot of people to this day won't forgive him for what he did, he still made an attempt. He got a second chance. He got back into the NFL, and, he started working for, animal rights, which, clearly everyone knew it was, just so people saw him in a better light. But at the same time, he definitely was trying. So,
But see, I think if Hogan did something for the African American community, I can't even speak. I'm getting so heated over here. I think if Hogan did something, it wouldn't just be for publicity, because I genuinely believe that he's a good guy.
I do too. I generally, and I actually did believe Michael Vick did it because he wanted to. And yeah, I'm not saying Hogan's doing it just to get his image back or anything like that. I really do believe if he did something, it's because he wanted to. Because he's, I think right now he's pretty, he's okay financially. I think he's scheduled to make a lot of money off that sex tape scandal in court. So I definitely believe whatever charity he decides to do, or if he decides to, it will be genuine, and it's because he wants to. And hopefully WWE would take notice of that, and then just gradually, bring him in, or bring him back.
Real quick, man. Just, again, play just devil's advocate, and if I'm going too far, just say stop and edit it. And this is a question, just to maybe give you, to give you the kind of feeling that maybe the black community may have.
Mm-hmm.
What if Hogan was saying derogatory things about a special needs child? Not that but with your brother, and just some outlandish shit.
Well, I think it would be the same thing. I think, and I know where you're going with that. And for anybody who doesn't know, my brother is mentally handicapped, and my brother probably means. Hmm?
I just want we love Johnny before I,
Right, no, this has nothing to do with John. He's listening to this anyways. But no, I know where you're going with it. And no, so yeah, that would hit me closer, because obviously I'm not African American, so I don't have the same feeling. But if somebody made a derogatory comment about my brother, we'd have a serious problem. But I'll say the same thing though. If Hogan said something about the mentally challenged, it would be the same thing. He owes an apology. He needs to make it right. He can be terminated from his contract until things smooth over if necessary. You do not scrub him from the history books. You do not fuck a man's career up because of something he said 8 years ago. It's the same thing. He has to apologize either way. Either way, white, black, Mexican, mentally challenged, whatever the fuck the case was, he said something that hurt a lot of people. As a human being, you owe an apology to the other people you hurt. People are not supposed to hurt other people. That's just common sense. This is being a good person.
Right.
You're not supposed to hurt anybody. If I hurt somebody, I apologize. I'm not a bad guy. I don't want to hurt anybody. If Hogan hurt people, he needs to publicly apologize, which he has done. Like I said, the statement I read earlier at the beginning of the podcast, he apologized. Step number 1, apologize. Number 2, now you need to do something to prove it, though. You need to do something positive.
That statement that you read, that he did to People magazine, that sounded like something that was drawn up by a PR person.
Well, I'm sure it was. Hogan can't. You can't go out there.
If I was an offended person, to me, that would piss me off even more. Go on YouTube real quick.
But see, there you go, though, Mike. You said earlier that celebrities are held to a different standard, and you said that. Now, we know if that is the case, and you're saying that, celebrities do not get to speak for themselves. Celebrities have publicists that speak for them. You can't have it both ways now, that they're held to one standard, but then they should be able to go out publicly.
But then it is kind of a double-edged sword. Something like this, he would need to think about what he says. That way it comes off as more genuine. You know what I mean? It just, right away when I heard that, I'm not even, offended by it. I could give a shit about what he said. It doesn't offend me. I don't get offended. But if I were to hear that and I was offended, man, your publicist wrote that shit.
Well, let me ask you though. What about? I'm gonna read the statement again because I have it right here. What about this statement does not, besides the one sentence? And I'm gonna read the statement, and then I'll go over it. He said again, just to recap: 8 years ago, I used offensive language during a conversation. It was unacceptable for me to have used that offensive language. There is no excuse for it, and I apologize for having done it. This is not who I am. I believe very strongly that every person in the world is important and should not be treated differently based on race, gender, orientation, religious beliefs, or otherwise. I am disappointed with myself that I use language that is offensive and inconsistent with my own beliefs. Now, to me, if I read that, yes, obviously the statement, the world, everyone in the world is important and should not be treated differently based on race, gender, orientation, blah, blah. That obviously is written by a PR person. However, he says there is no excuse for what he said. He apologized for having done it, and he's disappointed with himself for using that language that's inconsistent with his own beliefs because that he doesn't believe that, you know, this racism. What more could he say besides that little cliche line about the race, gender, orientation? What else could he come out there and say? Oh, I'm Hulk Hogan, brother. I'm not a racist, brother. I mean, come on.
Like if you're in sales and when you...
Well, that could be me reading it, though. I mean...
To read, and then you read that script trying to sell it. Now, if he came out and says, look, man, I fucked up. Even if he said like that, like, yeah, it's not the classiest way, I messed up. You know, that's definitely not what I believe. I believe all of us are equal. I'm very sorry for anyone I offended. I think that there is
okay, well, let me ask you this. Let me play devil's advocate for a minute. Let me ask you this. Name me one celebrity that's done that in the history of this fucking business. When has one celebrity came out and said anything real? They don't get to. They have to go through publicists. Name me somebody who got to come out and say, you know what, guys? I fucked up, man. I really fucked up. I'm sorry. I fucked up. I shouldn't have said that shit, man. You know me better than that, brother. That's not me, brother. I'm Hulk Hogan, brother. I fucked up, brother. I mean, come on, man. No one gets to fucking say that shit.
No one else has been... And well, people who have been busting, even when it comes out, like it doesn't. It's bad, and just because that's not how it's been done before, I think he would have done himself a better service had he just even went on YouTube real quick and made a 2-minute video saying what he felt, and then maybe had his publicist or a lawyer or someone look over it. You know, like, in case he said something that he shouldn't have said. Be like, no, you don't want to say that. But then it seems more genuine instead of sounding like, you know, like, if you're apologizing to me and you're reading from a piece of paper, I don't believe your apology. You know, like, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. I just want to mention, you know, I think you kind of make a point with the publicist apology, but at the same time, these recordings have not really been released, and as far as I'm aware, none of us actually heard this stuff.
Nope, this is all alleged.
Yeah, this is all hearsay. So I would almost say, like, an apology is kind of hearsay as well. It's just like, honestly, I want to dive in right into this devil's conversation, and I'm actually not even activate. I'm the be the devil. The number one thing I would have done, okay, because I've dealt with a handful of entertainment attorneys between here and LA. Number one thing I would have done is, if I was in Hogan's shoes, there's nothing stopping severing ties between myself and WWE. That's going to happen. That's the inevitable. As I mentioned, from the way I see it, that's out of Vince's hands. But the number one thing I definitely would have done, is I would not have said a word. I never would have tweeted anything. I never would have had a publicist release anything. I would have stayed quiet. Then I would have gone after, if I'm hearing things correctly, I would have gone after the National Enquirer. They seem to be the main source, right?
Yeah, they're credible, right?
Yeah. So, well, yeah. I mean, but they're the ones that are tossing out these allegations, right? They're the ones that are talking this bullshit. So I would have gone right after them with my attorneys, and I would have been ready to do battle. I would say, like, hey man, you got that shit. You know, what do we have to do? Do we have to settle out of court? You know, I don't want that shit being released. And then what we're going to do is we're going to backpedal everything. Either you buy them off, right? Because obviously we know it's true. We know Hogan said it. But once again, join me in Bizarro World. If Hogan could get them, you do a settlement. You say, you know, hey, you know, what do I have to do if you not to release that, or what do you have? What are your resources? And then have an attorney draw up a documentation, like almost like a subpoena, if you will. You give him 48 hours. It's like you have 48 hours to report to Terry Bollea where you got your resources from, or to bring him over. We'll do a settlement, but you have to report to us within 48 hours. If you don't, we're going to countersue you. And for I can't think of the terminology, but we're going to countersue you. And then they have to report. So then you can do a quick legal battle. And then you could actually, and if they did release these tapes, Hogan can go publicly and say, like, well, hey man, we submitted our legal papers to them. And then that they're not allowed to release anything. You know, so, but that being said, you could actually put a whole stop to this whole thing. Then, if they can actually put a stop to the whole thing, then you go public and be like, hey, this shit doesn't exist. This never happened. And I know that doesn't sound like the greatest thing in the world to do, but that would have saved a lot of fiascos. But the number one thing that Hogan should never have done is said anything. He should have just stayed quiet. Don't say anything. Talk to your attorneys. How do we take care of this? Then go out to National Enquirer, and then start dealing with shit. That's the number one thing I definitely would have done. The second thing I was thinking of too, and once again I'm playing the devil here, and I know my thoughts right now. What I'm saying is probably not the most friendly thing in the world, but
that's okay.
It is Hollywood. The next thing I would have done is I would have said, man, imagine what this could do for business, WWE wise. I go back to the Bret Hart example. When Vince said Bret screwed Bret, I go right back to the point with CM Punk. When CM Punk did his podcast, and then Vince did his podcast with Stone Cold, the interview, I would have buried CM Punk, him and Triple H, because CM Punk talked about the injuries, he talked about the wedding, the termination papers coming in the mail, all that type of stuff, and I just would have buried him. I said he didn't want to play ball, he didn't want to do business with us. I mean, come on. I mean, 90% of all this shit you're seeing on TV is a work. It's all, it's scripted. So it's just like, I would have just buried CM Punk. Now, I would have done something similar with this with Hogan. The biggest thing I always notice about this stuff is whenever these scandals happen, whether it's Hogan, CM Punk, do I dare say Chris Benoit, when these things seem to happen, this gets more attention than the programming itself, than Raw or SmackDown. We just talked about a few weeks ago how Raw had the lowest ratings. The buy rates for the network are struggling. They're not doing very well. So these type of things really help, bring attention to this. So I would definitely think it's like that's a few things that I would have definitely done in these type of scenarios. And Hogan's got to disappear. We're going to sever ties with you. You go to Florida, go to Miami, and lift weights. You're 70 years old. Go work out. And you won't bring it back in 6 months when things cool down. But that's definitely a lot of things that come to my mind with these whole fiascos. And the thing is, if Hogan had a good attorney, that's probably what they would have done. Instead of just going on Twitter.
Well, we know Hogan has a shit attorney because he pays Linda $40,000 a month in alimony. So.
So he's got an advantage card.
Right. What was that, Mike?
That brings me to what I was going to say. I was going to say I'm going to play host for a minute and ask you guys a question. And here's my question. If you were Vince McMahon, how would you have handled it? Sean.
The way I would have handled it... Oh, I'm sorry.
What's that?
If I was Vince McMahon, how would I have handled it? Oh, boy. I mean...
let me go deeper into this question. You get the call, I'm sure they knew 2 days before. So Wednesday night, you get a call saying, hey, this happened with Hogan. Go.
Mm-hmm. I guess now that the more I think about it, the more as much as I don't like it, and I'm sure Vince did not want to do this, but yeah, you got to find a way to. If you're a public company, and one of your, as Hogan has a Legends contract, this basically means he's an ambassador for our company in different parts of the world. He was going to schedule to be the guest GM in the Australian tour. So not only are you a public company, but you're a global company as well. And I guess I should definitely, the more I think about it, the more we're talking about it, yeah, I don't know if I would have totally released Hogan from the contract, but I definitely would do what I can to distance ourselves from this. Especially with him as your ambassador or Legends contract. Definitely, talk with Hogan and see what we can do jointly, to Hogan saying he's sorry, and then WWE has to do their part of, not only saying we don't condone or agree with what Hogan said. I kind of always go back to the NFL because you brought up a good point, Mike. I mean, when you find out what happened, whether it's Ray Rice or Adrian Peterson or even Greg Hardy, the NFL is now going to take extreme measures to distance themselves from that. So then that way, a shareholder or a cable company is like, okay, well, like with the NFL, it's a multi-billion-dollar corporation, just like with WWE. It shows other people like, okay, they don't condone this, they're not behind this in any way, shape, or form. So if I was McMahon, I probably, now that I think about it and I changed my stance a little bit, I probably would have done anything I could to distance ourselves from this, especially with as a PG, they want to consider themselves PG. Because another thing that was going through my head, too, throughout the day.
You said you would have done anything that you could do. Does that include scrubbing?
I just
anything that
I don't think I would scrub Hogan. I don't think I could do it because the fact of the matter is, you said it best with Benoit. You can't erase history. It's still there. So I probably wouldn't have scrubbed Hogan away. But the more I think about it, I probably would distance myself a little bit from, well, not a little bit, but distance myself away from the situation. But again, what I was trying to say to myself earlier is, because WWE's PG is, I just couldn't help but wonder, would the outcome been any different if this was during the Attitude Era? When everything was, TV 14 to sometimes even TVMA. What would have been the outcome of it then? And it may have been the same. I don't know. I was just asking myself the question on that.
No, not to call you out, all right. No, I definitely believe it would have been different. But in the opening of your statement, you said that if you were Vince, then you'd work with him to, basically like how Matt was saying earlier, do something for the African American community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then towards wrapping it up, you said that you would distance yourself as far away as possible. There's no way you could do both. So which one would you do?
God, and then unfortunately, I sound like I'm all over the place because,
well, it's an uncomfortable situation,
it
Sean.
It's a little
Sean, let me say this to you, Sean. Sean, let me say this to you, just to ease your mind. I can hear you through the phone. Let me say this. There is no wrong answer, okay? Because, for one, there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. Either way, what Hulk Hogan is a fucked up, shitty situation. There's no right. There's no wrong.
It's not the SATs.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, there's no easy way out. So whatever answer you give is the right answer.
I'll be perfectly honest on it. I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would choose. I guess I just see I guess I just really see both sides of it. Maybe there's a reason I don't own $1 billion company and I'm not a CEO of $1 billion company, because I can see Vince doing. I can understand Vince doing both. Whether it's distancing yourself, from the situation. Or on the flip side, and I think what a lot of wrestling fans would like to see is, get together with Hogan and help him, through this situation. And
Vince McMahon, you're not Shawn right now. You're not Shawn right now. You're Vince McMahon. Make a decision. You have to make it right away.
I can't. I don't know. I don't know what the decision is. I really don't. I don't. I guess. Okay. If you want me to make a decision, I would distance myself. If I'm running a $1 billion company and I have other, I have shareholders, I have, other companies that I have to report to, yes, I probably would have distanced myself, and that would be including probably terminating Hogan. But I would not scrub him from the history books at all. Because you just can't. You just can't.
I agree. Josh?
Here's what I would do. And I kind of agree with Shawn when he started his spiel on it. You are in a public trade company, public shares, and Wall Street, whatever it is. So Vince, as I mentioned before, Vince has people he needs to answer to. The number one thing I would definitely do, obviously, as I mentioned before, severing ties. I think that was inevitable. That was going to happen. The number one thing I would definitely do, I wouldn't erase anything on the website. I would definitely not take down the Hall of Fame thing. I think that was just ridiculous. I haven't checked anything online or WWE.com or whatever for Hall of Fame stuff, but if that is true, I think that's just downright dumb, ridiculous. But the number one thing I would definitely do though is regarding a lot of things going on. I would wait for people, and this is probably because I'm way younger than Vince McMahon, and Vince seems to be answering.
Well, I think we're all way younger.
yeah. But what I mean by that though is the fact that Vince seems to be at a point where he kind of answers to other people, like I said before, the public trade stuff. He answers to other people. Where when he was younger, like let's go 1985 when he started the first WrestleMania and he took over the company from his father. He was ballsy, balls to the wall, man. He took chances. He risked it all. He put I think about like a first and a second mortgage on his home to make sure WrestleMania happened. That Vince McMahon no longer exists. That Vince waved goodbye. He's gone. So that being said, I think with myself, I'm younger, I'm a little more ballsy. I would wait it out. I would wait for anybody to complain about Hall of Fame stuff, memorabilia, network stuff, all that type of stuff. You know what? I would even debate severing ties. I would even debate on that. I would probably just say, hey, Hogan, take a break. Go home for 2 months. We got to let this thing cool down. And I wouldn't even kill his contract. I would just say, go home for 2 months, man. And we're going to have to put somebody else in your spot for tough money. And then I would just wait. I would just wait for people to complain, And then if there are high investors and Wall Street people that are like, you're gotta get rid of. Then I'd be like, okay, Hogan, I had a few meetings the last couple of weeks. It's not looking very good. We may have to sever ties. Or if it's completely silent and the whole thing dies off, come on back. You know what? We're gonna put you back. We're gonna bring you back to the final airing of Tough Enough, and you're gonna announce the winner. And we'll go from there. That's what I definitely would do. I would have him disappear for just a month or two, let the whole thing cool down. I definitely would not erase any memorabilia stuff. If anything, though, the one thing I definitely think about though is, Matt, you brought this up with the steroid trial back in the early '90s. And that is when I think it makes the decisions a little easier for Vince, because Vince and Hogan did a shoot promo on each other in 2003 when they had their match. But when they did a promo on SmackDown, part of that was shoot, when Vince said, you try to put me out of business, you testified against me, which Hogan didn't. Like you mentioned, he actually went in Vince's favor. But it did sever ties between them. Hogan stated publicly that trial between him and Vince really created a wedge in the relationship. I think after that, and then when Hogan went to WCW, created the NWO and all that type of stuff, there's no real relationship between Vince and Hogan. As a friendship, as any kind of a kindled relationship, it's all business to Vince now. So I think even to that point, severing the ties between WWE and Hogan is probably not that hard of a decision for Vince, to be perfectly honest with you, if you go through history. If this was 1989, this would be tough. I don't think Vince could do it. I think this would almost take like maybe 3 or 4 therapy sessions just for Vince to stomach up a decision. I think it would take a while. But after the steroid trial, the Monday Night Wars, Vince almost going out of business, Hogan actually holding up signs saying, Vince fears Bischoff or Vince fears Nitro. I forget what it was. But Hogan would hold up these signs on Nitro about Vince McMahon with Bischoff. and Hogan almost went out of, or Vince almost went out of business. So I think this day and age, it's really easy emotionally for Vince to make the decision. So I think, though there's a couple of things that I think about with those decisions. I would definitely, like I said, I would have Hogan go home, chill out, and I would not remove any memorabilia. But if it came to it, then I would sever ties. I don't think there'd be any emotion to it just because of the history, and that's how I would look at it.
And see, I'm with you, Josh. That's almost exactly what I was going to say to a T. If I was Vince, I would speak with Hogan and let him know, hey, this is what's going to go on. Hulk Hogan is, and I would release a statement saying Hulk Hogan is suspended indefinitely, pending ongoing investigation, and he would get a fine. He'd be fined a hefty amount. He's used to paying them, so it shouldn't be a fucking problem. And then I'd wait to see the public's reaction to what's going on. Because right now, Vince is reacting as if, there was an outcry of kill Hogan. So, he took the most extreme act that could possibly be taken when, who knows, he may not have even needed to do that. But he did it that way. He didn't fall under scrutiny. So, if I was Vince, I would have had a conversation with Hogan, and I believe Hogan would understand. He knows the times we're living in as well. And like I said before, I honestly believe his fans are probably more upset over this than he is. So I would have had that conversation with him, suspended him indefinitely, seeing how things were around, maybe a month or two from now, see if it died down, bring him back, see what the reaction is, and then make my decision after what the reaction is, bringing him back a couple months later, and go from there. If the reaction was bad, like, oh, racist WWE, blah, 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 then I would have just terminated him, but never have scrubbed him. No matter what, never have scrubbed him. But a definite termination to where, look, this is it, goodbye, and terminate him, but never have scrubbed him. Or if the reaction wasn't that bad, then I would have kept him on, but sparingly. Definitely would have removed him from Tough Enough, and then go with the WrestleMania thing, and let him end his scrutiny, tell him, like, hey, this year at WrestleMania, it's your last match, last appearance on WWE TV. And that's what I would have done. Matt?
Well, there's no surprise. I'm going to say right off the bat, I would not have scrubbed Hulk Hogan. I think you scrub Hulk Hogan as a slap in the face to Terry Bollea, a slap in the face to the wrestling fans. I think that's the worst thing you could have done. And me personally, and I've said this about Chris Benoit, you don't scrub Chris Benoit. I don't care if he's innocent or guilty, and I don't know that he is guilty, so I'm not going to say he is. You don't scrub somebody who has put their body and their life on the line for your entertainment. You don't scrub them and say they don't exist.
Right.
So I don't believe in the scrubbing.
Adolf Hitler isn't. So you're right.
He's in the fucking history books. Saddam Hussein, Bin Laden, Adolf Hitler, every asshole in America, every asshole in the world in the history books. You don't scrub somebody. Now, let's just say not being not scrubbed doesn't make you a good guy. It just means, okay, this is now part of your legacy. Good, bad, in between, whatever. This incident, as unfortunate as this incident is, this is now part of Hulk Hogan's legacy. The question is, how do you proceed as Vince McMahon? And Mike, you said exactly to start out what I was going to say. You do not terminate Hulk Hogan under any circumstance. Right off the bat, you do not terminate Hulk Hogan for a comment made 8 years ago. Now, this was not made 8 days ago. This is 8 years ago. You suspend Hulk Hogan indefinitely. You make a public joint statement with Hulk Hogan on TV so you can see his face and his expression as he gives you an apology for what he said 8 years ago, and how ignorant and how stupid and how much fucking mess that he has made, and he apologizes to not only the African American community, but he also apologizes to the American people. The Hulkamaniacs has believed in him. You apologize to them as well, because not just the African American community was offended by this. You offended Hulkamaniacs. Now, like, don't get me wrong. I'm going to defend Hulk Hogan till I'm blue in the face, because I'm a fucking Hulkamaniac with no shame. However, I acknowledge the fuck up that he made, but I also acknowledge that nobody is perfect. Not Hulk Hogan, not me. None of us are perfect. So you suspend Hulk Hogan indefinitely. You do not scrub him. You make the formal apology, but then you do what I said earlier. You have to go out and you have to be positive. You put this positive spin on it, and Hulk Hogan goes out and he has to do something positive for the community, for the African American community. He has to rebuild the trust that he has now lost with that community, but also with his Hulkamaniacs. Because WWE likes to say they're celebrating and embracing individuals of all backgrounds. Okay, well, so does Hulkamania, because for last I knew, and you guys would probably know this as well as longtime wrestling fans, Hulk Hogan transcend professional wrestling. So you want to terminate Hulk Hogan for what? Because I guarantee you, if you go and you Google right now, every single report that is out there is telling you WWE legend, WWE Hall of Famer, former WWE World Heavyweight Champion, WWE Wrestling Superstar, Hulk Hogan. Nobody's saying, oh yeah, Terry Bollea, he said a racial slur. No, doesn't matter if that piece of paper is signed or not. Hulk Hogan is WWE. If he's in WCW, guess what? Hulk Hogan's WWE. If he's in TNA, guess what? Hulk Hogan's WWE. That's the facts. Hulk Hogan is WWE. WWE is Hulk Hogan. That piece of paper does not make a fuck of difference. He is WWE. So terminating him does no good. Scrubbing him, most ridiculous thing I ever heard. Doesn't matter. He is WWE. But he needs to make it right. You apologize, a sincere apology where people can see his face and know that he is indeed sorry, because he needs to rebuild his trust that he has lost the African American community, but also with his Hulkamaniacs. And that's the truth. He has to rebuild lost trust with Hulkamaniacs, because he hurt millions of people across the world today with a comment he made 8 years ago. Because for 30 years, guys like me, or older than me, for many more years, for 39 years, this guy's had a career, and we have believed in say your prayers, take your vitamins, believe in yourself, believe in the man above, all the things that Hogan has preached. We believe them as true as the grass on the ground, as true as the sky is blue. We believed him because he made us believe him. It is his job as Hulk Hogan, not as Terry Bollea, as Hulk Hogan. It is his job to rebuild that trust, not just put out a statement, an apology, not be terminated from his contract, not be scrubbed from social media. He needs to rebuild in a positive way, which only Hulk Hogan can do. And because he's Hulk Hogan, he can do it. Because he made people believe for 39 years. When you knew wrestling was fake as shit, you knew that shit was scripted, it didn't matter. Because Hulk Hogan. When you knew you didn't like wrestling, you hated it, you didn't want nothing to do with it, you knew who Hulk Hogan was, and you liked Hulk Hogan. On Johnny Carson's show in the 70s, Hulk Hogan was down there. Jay Leno show, Hulk Hogan. He's been all over the place because he's Hulk Hogan. He's a household name. He transcends wrestling. He transcends the WWE. People believe in second chances in this country, whether we're a negative country or not. People want to believe in second chances, and that's what the WWE should have come out and said. We believe in embracing people. We believe in not bullying people. We believe in not discriminating people. We also believe in second chances. And Hulk Hogan made a mistake, and Hulk Hogan's gonna make it right because he's fucking Hulk Hogan. You don't get more simple than that. This isn't like Steve Austin making a racial slur. This isn't Ric Flair. This isn't fucking Jeff Hardy. This is Hulk Hogan. This is the real American hero, not a gimmick that you see on TV for wrestling. This is the fucking guy who transcends the company, transcends the sport. This is Hulk Hogan. People, whether you like wrestling or hate wrestling, in the 80s, in the 90s, and goddamn it, the 2000s, you love the legend that is Hulk Hogan. You do not want to hate Hulk Hogan unless you're Mike Moulton and you secretly like Hulk Hogan, but you want to hate him as a character. People love Hulk Hogan. And people want to give, and I guarantee you, if you go on Twitter right now, besides a few dumbass fans who don't get it, people want to believe that Hulk Hogan made a mistake, and they want to give him a second chance. Because he's fucking Hulk Hogan, and he deserves it. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
I totally agree.
All right, man. If this was Kevin Owens.
Fuck Kevin. No, I'm kidding. What's up? I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm joking.
Just
playing like the devil's advocate again, right. Like how earlier you guys mentioned the Screwjob 97.
Uh-huh.
If it was Kevin Owens and he was released and scrubbed for the, let's say, I won't say Kevin Owens. Let's say Randy Orton.
Mm-hmm.
So Randy Orton was given the Chris Benoit treatment, and he done the exact same thing. Would you feel as passionately about like, oh, they're fucking wrong, fuck Vince McMahon for this?
If they scrubbed Randy Orton, I would feel just as passionately. Because you don't scrub anybody, in my opinion. Like I said, these wrestlers, these entertainers, put their body on the line every night they get in that ring. One false move and they're paralyzed. One false move and they end up like Darren Drozdov. Okay, these guys put their body on the line. You don't get to scrub these people.
When he says they put their bodies on the line, for anyone that's thinking it's fake or whatever, and what they go through, Brock Lesnar said himself, even after doing real fighting, that WWE was a lot harder on his body and on his mental than fighting in the UFC, where he was getting hit by 250-pound men for real. And I did the quote fingers when I said that.
Mm-hmm.
That it was more devastating to his life and his body going out and working with the WWE then. Now, maybe not as much because of the way the way his contract is set up. But for those guys that night in, night out, it's a lot. It's more demanding than what MMA is. Sorry to interrupt that.
Yeah. No, you're fine, and you're right, because here's the thing. For anybody living in the Stone Ages, we all know on this podcast and in the world, professional wrestling is scripted. We get it. It's a show. It's a TV show. We know who's going to win. We know who's going to lose. They're talking to each other while they're doing moves. Sorry to break the fucking formula there. We know how it works. But guess what? Right. I just killed kayfabe. She died 20 years ago, but I killed her again. But the thing is, when you get slammed to that mat, that is a piece of fucking plywood with an inch of foam over top of it and a canvas. There is no give to that piece of plywood. When you get punched, they're pulling that punch. But I don't know about you. I'm not letting somebody punch me in the face even if they're pulling it, because it's still going to hurt me. I don't want to get punched in the face. I don't want to get kicked in the stomach even if they're pulling it. I don't want to get body slammed or thrown over the top rope down 8 feet to the floor below. I don't want that shit to happen because it hurts.
Versus wrestling is fake passion.
Huh?
You're putting your passion from the Hogan over to the wrestling is fake.
Man, I'll bring my passion everywhere. I don't even care.
Well, it's kind of funny too. You guys mentioned Randy Orton. Since really confessing people's sins and stuff like that. He was suspended. Actually, I think on 2 different occasions for steroid use.
Yep,
and he was
twice.
also suspended, I think, for a total of 60 days for sexual harassment on the Divas. I think this was probably 2005, 2006.
I remember in his book he talked about.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So Benoit. Sexual harassment. That's like border. Not as bad, but the lesser two evils. That's borderline Mike Tyson, the stuff we talked about earlier. So and he wasn't scrubbed or Benoit treated. He was suspended, but he came back, and he had 2 or 3 different chances on that steroid use. So the guys, I think he even talked about it in his documentary on the network. They talk about his. I don't think they talk about the sexual harassment. They talked about the steroid use. He just kept falling off the wagon.
Well, I was going to go back to the scrubbing thing. That what I really go ahead. Sorry.
Just 30 seconds. I think what it comes to is the bigger you are, the bigger the punishment. If it was some low-level guy, if, like, for instance, like, I can go up to 10 people right now and be like, did you hear what Kevin Owens said? Who's Kevin Owens? What school did he go to? That's what,
Yeah.
That's what people would say. So the bigger you are, I believe the more the punishment has to be for the company in a sense. And shit. I was going to say one more thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead. When I remember it, I will come back to it.
Well, and it's no secret. I love all sports. Well, except for MMA and UFC. I have nothing against it. I just never really followed it. But I love football. I like hockey. But you said it exactly right, Mike. The bigger the name, the bigger the punishment. I mean, look, you kind of look at Tom Brady, and whether, whatever your opinion is on what he had to do or didn't have to do with Deflategate or anything like that, there are people out there that think the Super Bowl the Super Bowl win should be taken away from the New England Patriots, or the MVP award for the Super Bowl should be taken away from Tom Brady. Again, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with, scrubbing anybody from the history book, because the fact of the matter is they still did it. You can't erase, the history of it. Same thing with Adrian Peterson. Me personally, I hated how he treated his child, but I don't believe you should take his MVP award that he won a few years back. Don't scrub him in that way too. And that's how I feel again about Hogan. But yeah, you're exactly right, Mike. The fact that he is a household name, that's probably one of the main reasons as well. And the fact that he's older and he's not a full-time active wrestler like a John Cena or a Seth Rollins is reason why I think in WWE's mind that he was expendable, unfortunately.
So, Sean, I want to ask you a question, and then I want Josh and Mike to answer it as well. This is something that just popped in my head as I was listening to you guys talk about the scrubbing, and I've been reading. As I guess you can guess, I've read basically every article out there about this today, from CNN to the National Enquirer and all their credibility. But Sean, I want to ask you: do you think, in your opinion, the WWE brought more attention to this than there would have been by scrubbing Hulk Hogan? If they had not vanquished him from their website, do you think this would have gotten as much attention? Because every article out there, when you read it, states Hulk Hogan under fire for using the N-word, for racial slurs. WWE completely removes him from all social media, scrubbing him from their website. That's in every single article. Would this have been as big of a deal if WWE didn't say anything? Or if they just left a comment, he's been returned, or didn't say anything? They didn't fire Hogan. Would it have been a big deal? Or is the fact he got terminated what made this such a big deal, in your opinion? What do you think?
I think the way I see it... Oh, go ahead.
I think that it would have, I truly believe that the WWE, that it would have got just as much attention regardless of if they scrubbed him or not. Or, I don't think the media, cares as much about him being scrubbed. Or about him being scrubbed from the record books.
Well, it's in every article.
I think if they would have terminated, if they didn't terminate him or punish him at all, it would have been 10 times worse. I really do think that. However, I think they did the right thing. No. I take that back. I don't think they brought any more attention upon themselves than what would have been brought upon. Because imagine if it would have came out and WWE does nothing.
Yeah.
So I don't believe they brought any more attention on themselves. If they would have just said WWE suspends Hulk Hogan, they would have gotten just as much media attention. It's getting more attention from the fans. right now, because it's fans like, us. Matt can attest to this. I've always hated Hogan. Me and Bobby Heenan were on the same wavelength ever since I was 5 years old. I'm not a Hogan fan. I've never been a Hulkamaniac. Never was. Never cheered for Hogan. Ever.
We all have our flaws.
I was one of the rare ones. I always rooted for the bad guy. And my favorite moment was when Macho Man slapped Hogan. Best tag ever. Can never be topped. But even with all that said, scrubbing him is wrong. And I don't think the scrubbing was necessary, because even though WWE is big, it's not as big as the NFL and doesn't have as much invested interest to where, the WWE is only on WWE Network and the TV shows that it's on, where the NFL is on ESPN, ABC, ABC, CBS, Fox, NFL Network.
Well, let me tell you this real fast, Mike. Just to kind of what reason why I asked, I googled this real fast, and I just want to read this real fast. The headline on Fox News: WWE terminates contract with Hulk Hogan. TMZ: Hulk Hogan fired by WWE. Rolling Stone: Hulk Hogan fired by WWE over racial tirade. LA Times: Hulk Hogan fired by WWE. Fortune.com: why the WWE just fired Hulk Hogan. Bleacher Report: Hulk Hogan fired by WWE.
No one cares about the scrubbing. The scrubbing wasn't necessary.
No, but nobody is saying Hulk Hogan racial slurs. The attention is Hulk Hogan fired by WWE. The racial slurs are in the article, but the attention is coming because Hulk Hogan was terminated by WWE. You cannot terminate the fucking biggest superstar you've ever had and not get the attention. Every headline is Hulk Hogan terminated by WWE, not Hulk Hogan is a racist, not Hulk Hogan fucked himself.
Wasn't your question though, Matt? Wasn't your question though, is would this have been a bigger deal had they not scrubbed, or are you?
Well, had they not scrubbed him and fired him, is what I'm saying. The scrubbing, I throw it hand in hand basically because the scrubbing went with it. But basically, if they would have just, like we said, suspended him indefinitely or whatever they were going to do and apologize, would this not have been the huge deal it's become? Because every headline has. Even here we go, MTV.com, Hulk Hogan fired from WWE. That's the fucking same repeat headline on every single thing. It's all Hulk Hogan fired by WWE.
They don't want Hulk Hogan. They don't want to make him look bad. But they're not trying to make the racial slur the issue. They're making.
But isn't that the issue apparently?
But that speaks to Hulk. That speaks to the love that a lot of media outlets still have for Hulk Hogan, that they're not saying Hulk Hogan gets fired for being a racist or whatnot. They're saying Hogan terminated from WWE, and of course they have the details inside, but they're not attacking him. Since you're in front of a computer, go to BET.com, see what it says, just out of curiosity.
Go to BET.com?
Yeah.
All right.
Honestly, I think that's a bullshit network, because if there was a network that was white entertainment television...
Yeah, well, let's not get to that conversation. We've had enough trouble here already. Well, hold on. I'm gonna go to BET.com real fast. And on BET.com, there is nothing about Hulk Hogan being terminated or being a racist.
Niggas don't care. Oh, sorry. I use the N-word. I'm half black. I have that right.
No, you know what's on BET.com? The number one story is the authorities release details on Bland's autopsy, because that's what people should be worried about.
Man, something that really fucking matters. That's this phrase. Keep scrolling down, though.
Keep scrolling down.
See if there's a story of, it may not be the top story.
Oh, no, there's nothing on here. There's that. There's something about Rev Sharpton's pledge. There's Katrina Chapman. NAACP seeks further inquiry into something about somebody else. There's a lot of shit on here. 50 Cent, loses another $2 million in sex tape lawsuit. Things that really matter like that are on here, obviously. But no, BET and
crazy.
And like,
That's crazy. Think
What?
about, like, for the last 2 hours we've been talking about this and, like, how it might affect the black community and whatnot, but it's not even on BET.
That's what I'm saying, though. If you go on BET, they're talking about, things that actually really matter. That an African American woman was assaulted by a police officer and died under suspicious circumstances, which, that needs to be investigated, because that kind of shit happens all the time and needs to be addressed. Somebody making a stupid comment 8 years ago fails in comparison to somebody losing their life because something that could have been prevented. And if that is racism, that needs to be addressed. I mean, that's not for a pop culture podcast like ourselves, but I'm saying that's the kind of shit that needs to be addressed. This shit about Hogan has been blown completely out of proportion. And yes, like I said since beginner's podcast, it was a stupid comment, should have never been said. But it's definitely not what America needs to be worrying about. People in America, we worry about too much stupid shit. Like Josh, like you said, we're too PC. We worry about Ariana Grande licking donuts and saying, "I hate America." We worry about Miley Cyrus getting naked on Instagram and going crazy. We worry about the dumbest fucking things, but then real shit happens around the world. People get shot up in movie theaters yesterday going to see a fucking movie with their family, and some asshole stands up and starts killing people. No one wants to talk about that today. Let's talk about Hulk Hogan's stupid-ass comment from 8 years ago. I mean, what the fuck, man? That's what's wrong with people.
Well, and I've actually heard a lot of chatter on the other ends too. I mean, I heard a lot about Hulk Hogan, and I've heard a lot too about the shootings, unfortunately, as well. I think, Mike, you said it best, that I think if WWE had done nothing, it would have gotten probably a lot more mainstream than it did. I think the scrubbing, I think it's a bigger story to wrestling fans. I think to just a casual person, it probably, to them, and I could be wrong, it's probably not as a big deal as we think it is. But I think, yeah, I mean, obviously the WWE brought themselves into this when they said they fired.
Right. That's my whole thing.
Hulk Hogan. So, yeah, I think WWE, there's publicity on them as well.
I think they brought publicity onto him by firing Hulk Hogan, because that's where all the attention has gone, is Hogan being terminated, not so much what he said. I mean, that has erupted because of it, but as far as national coverage, it's about him being terminated is where the coverage comes in, because the scrubbing thing, like, let's be honest, and as much as I hate it, and I think it's a fucking insult, like Sean, you said it perfectly, and I think Mike, you said it once before too, it matters to us, the fans, because the reality is, you can't scrub Hulk Hogan. You ask anybody on the street who Hulk Hogan is, they're going to tell you he's a WWF wrestler. Not WWE, he is a WWF wrestler. He's a legend, he's a Hall of Famer. Vince has tried to kill Hulkamania a million times. He probably fucking leaked the shit. He's trying to kill Hulkamania again. It ain't going to work. I guarantee you in 5 years, Hogan's back on top. Because he's fucking Hulk Hogan.
Well, the biggest thing that comes to mind too is the fact that what if this whole thing wasn't work? It's not.
I don't know about that, man. But then, hey, in wrestling, everything's a work, so you never know.
You never know, but that's the whole thing, though, and that's what I was saying before. Is like these scandals, as I mentioned with CM Punk, now Hogan, and what have you, gets more attention than the actual programming. And like I said before, with the show or the network is struggling, with making, getting subscribers and stuff like that, signing up to the network and shit like that. Like every other month, they're offering free months for brand new customers. And stuff
right.
Like that, right. So that's the whole thing. It's like these things get more attention than the actual product. And Mike, I think
product sucks.
You mentioned that the NFL is all over the place, bigger than the WWE, right? But that's the thing, though. Like I hate to keep going back in time, but right in 1998 and 1999, WWE or F, whatever, was killing everybody in the ratings, not just Nitro. By 1999, they were killing everybody. They were the highest rated program on cable at the time. There was news stories on Entertainment Tonight and all those other programs. They were killing Monday Night Football. They were killing other programs that are on TV, on MTV. Just like everything across the board. So, and I think that's the whole problem with the WWE is they have things like this that does create a lot of attention, but they don't capitalize on it. That's why I keep going back to the Bret Hart scenario. Vince capitalized on it. He became this heel. He screwed over Bret, which was real, just like this Hogan thing is real. And people grabbed onto it. Now, once again, just like with Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, you're seeing the company as this heel, but they don't capitalize on it. And it's just back to good old programming like normal, and we're going to have the lowest ratings ever, and that's the whole thing. It's like they can kind of go back to try to recapture what they once had. So, but it just comes to things like, man, what if this was a work? It would be such a great work, but I know it's not, and I know that they're just going to drop the ball again.
Well, guys, I'm going to wrap this podcast up. We've been on for a little over 2 hours. Time to wrap it up. Is there any closing thoughts, Josh, from you? Any closing thoughts on the Hulk Hogan story? Because as far as I'm concerned, unless something major happens, I don't want to talk about this anymore. We'll just let this go.
Yeah, just let it cool down, and the next couple of days we probably won't even care, and with SummerSlam, Undertaker, Brock Lesnar coming up, have to be a bigger subject. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that next week. Yeah, and I think it's just another example of, just people overreacting to shit, like it's before. Or like you mentioned that, with the victims of this movie theater that happened last night, So that shit we should care about, not what the fuck someone said like 8 years ago.
What about you, Shawn? Any closing thoughts on this Hulk Hogan situation?
Just it's a real unfortunate situation. I think, the WWE in itself really took it, in my opinion, took it too far, especially with the scrubbing. But I agree with Josh. Let's give it a couple days to a couple weeks, maybe even a couple months. Let it, let this die down and go from there. I will say I'm interested to see the crowds to see if they'll do what they did with CM Punk, just start chanting Hogan's name. I'm kind of curious on that too.
I think they will. But Mike, any closing thoughts on your end?
Actually, yeah, and it's real interesting because I know Shawn doesn't watch MMA, but I'm sure, Matt, you've seen some of the backlash, and I'm just really interested to see how the fans are truly going to react, because you heard about the firing of Stitch, right, Matt?
Yes.
You've seen, and for you guys, even if you don't watch MMA, just look up Stitch the Cut Man, and look what UFC and Dana White did to him over money.
Yep, we're actually going to talk about that next week on the podcast. We're going to go into detail about that because that's a big story.
Yeah,
we would have talked about it tonight, but
MMA fans are reacting over this.
Mm-hmm.
So over a cut man. This isn't a fighter, guys. This is a cut man, and it's huge. So I could only imagine over Hulk Hogan what it's going to be like. So I'm very interested to see. I think we all agree. The one thing we all agree on is the scrubbing should never be done, no matter what. No matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Scrubbing should be done.
The funny thing about scrubbing is we've said the last 2 hours of this podcast you shouldn't scrub somebody, but I think when you hear it from somebody that really, really is the top of this sport, that it makes a difference. And just now on Facebook and Twitter, Mark Calloway, better known as The Undertaker, just posted a picture of himself shaking hands with Hulk Hogan after their match, and he says, "You can't erase someone as big as Hulk Hogan away from history." That speaks volumes to what I've been saying for the last 2 hours. When The Undertaker, and there is no more locker room leader in the WWF for the last fucking however many years, 20 years, whatever the hell it's been, 25 years?
2 decades.
Since 1990. My math is bad. I'm too heated right now to think. But when The Undertaker comes on to social media against, and you know damn well the WWE does not want him to post this, a picture shaking hands with Hulk Hogan, and says you cannot, you know what I'm saying? You cannot erase Hulk Hogan from WWE history. That speaks volumes.
Especially with, I don't think there's anyone else that people respect more than Taker.
What'd you say, Mike?
Undertaker just made Mount Rushmore. Go ahead, Sean. Sorry for interrupting.
Undertaker's been in Mount Rushmore.
And that's from Taker. I think he's arguably the most respected wrestler, in my opinion, of all time. The most, it's like universally everyone has like the most respect for that guy. So
well, definitely in the WWE locker room, absolutely, because since 1990, Undertaker has been a main eventer and never left that locker room. When everybody else left, even my guy Hulk Hogan, Taker never left. So if you ask anybody, past or present, who the locker room leader of WWE is, they'll tell you it's Undertaker. Oh, yeah. So this speaks volumes. This sums everything up. I ain't gonna argue no more. This sums it up right here.
Screenshot that and post it on the web. Screenshot that and post it. I'm gonna screenshot it, and I remember what I forgot earlier, where someone said, and they didn't mean it in a joking manner either. They said my whole childhood is ruined. First Bill Cosby, now Hulk Hogan. At least I got the Thundercats.
Don't say that. They'll fuck them up next. They're next. Yeah. Somebody said something bad Thundercats at some point. They're screwed now too. You can't. This is a unfortunate thing, but the reality is this does not. This is a blimp on the radar. Okay, Hulk Hogan is larger than professional wrestling. He's bigger than WWE. He will outlast this. He's been through worse. Okay, he's been through worse than this, and he's still at the top. He'll be at the top, whether it's a year from now, 5 years, 10 years. I still will guarantee you he will go down as the greatest wrestler of all time. He'll go down as bigger than WWE, and that's just the way. It's an unfortunate event. You know, that's why we took 2 hours or 2.5 hours, whatever this has been, to talk about it on this podcast, because it's a huge deal in the wrestling world. But at the end of the day, like Mark Calloway, The Undertaker, just said, you can't erase somebody as big as Hulk Hogan. Vince has tried for years. Now, you know, people in the media want to tarnish Hulk Hogan's name. Have at it, guys, because if there's one thing I know, Hulkamaniacs, man.
The media doesn't want to tarnish him. They're just saying he's fired. They're not saying they're racist. Keep that in mind.
That's true. You do have a valid point there. They're not. And you know why that is? Because the media is Hulkamaniacs. Everybody's a fuck. Besides you, Mike, everybody's a Hulkamaniac.
You are fucking Hulkamaniac.
You're fading away, Mike.
I said, "Oh my God, shut the fuck up!" I try and make things cool, say something you like, and the media is awesome.
They're Hulkamaniacs, man. This is the way it is. I know you hate it.
I wanted Hulkamania to die, but not like this.
It's not going to die like this, man. It's not going to die like this. I guarantee you. It's not going to die like this. It ain't never going to die. You and Bobby Heenan are wrong. You started the podcast out and said Hulkamania was dead like Bobby Heenan said, and you're wrong, man.
When I was...
That's what I heard in my head. You know, like when you like read things or see things, you just hear a quote. That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
When I listen to Mike chant about how much he hates Hulkamania, I think of the Brother Love show when Earthquake sat on him. And all those little kids were crying and shit. It's like, no.
Hey, Matt, this should give you a lot of comfort. People still love Michael Jackson, and what he was accused of was way worse.
It's a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah,
icon. Michael Jackson, Hulk Hogan. Not that but you know.
Right? No, it's true though, because people can be accused of things, but that's what I said earlier. People believe in second chances. Michael Jackson got a lot of heat for a lot of years because of what he was accused of, what he allegedly had done. And that's, you don't get much worse than that. No, you don't get any worse than that. But people still love Michael Jackson, and it's the same thing with Hulk Hogan. What he was accused of, I feel bad for anybody that Hulk Hogan offended, and I know Hulk Hogan feels bad for anybody he offended, and it's a horrible thing. He should have never said it. It's a very regretful situation for him, for the people that believe in him, like myself and the Hulkamaniacs. This is a very regretful situation. I hope to God that Hulk Hogan makes it right. I hope to God the WWE makes it right. And more importantly, I hope to God that Hulk Hogan is back home in the WWE soon, gets to headline WrestleMania 32 like he needs to, retires on a high note, and all of this shit can be put to the past where it belongs. Because it was 8 years ago. It does not matter to the man that Hulk Hogan is today. He's a born-again Christian, and, you know, let's just leave it the way the guy is today and not his past. We all got one. Let's leave it there. It's where it belongs, in the past.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yep.
So, with that said, next week we'll be back with hopefully more fun talk. We're going to talk Jurassic World. We're going to talk Joe Dirt 2, Ant-Man, bunch
don't
of...
have to.
Sean's going to want tired about Joe Dirt 2. So be here for next week for Joe Dirt 2 when Sean destroys that film because he couldn't even finish it. He felt like...
Tried 4 different times, couldn't do it.
So that ought to be an interesting conversation next week. But, guys, I appreciate you all talking about Hulk Hogan today. I know this is a little bit longer podcast. This was a heated conversation, but it needed to be done. It needed to be said. It was a good conversation. I hope there's no hard feelings with anybody. If we offended any of our listeners, I apologize. That was definitely not our intention. But much like... you know, the rest of America and the world, this is a melting pot of people. We all have different opinions and beliefs and viewpoints, and that's what makes the world go around. So it was a great podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. And guys, until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Never Submit podcast. We appreciate your support and hope you enjoyed the show. We want to hear from you. Send your feedback, questions, and ideas to neversubmitpodcast@gmail.com. Please subscribe on iTunes. You'll never miss the show. Also, be sure to like our page on Facebook at facebook.com/neversubmit and visit our website at neversubmitent.com. Thanks again for listening to the Never Submit podcast.